We have got to take it to the finish line and take it to the country.
Meantime, the Democratic presidential race has taken on a new shape as the New Hampshire primary is underway. A Quinnipiac University poll shows Bernie Sanders overtaking Joe Biden in first place, and Michael Bloomberg surging to third place on a wave of advertising. Michael Bloomberg is founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. The Senate will take up a resolution this week intended to rein in President Trump's ability to attack Iran without congressional authorization. That story in this report from Bloomberg's Ed Baxter.
As Democrats and a small group of Republican senators push back following the killing in January of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, Senator Mike Lee says this is not about bucking the president. This is about making sure the process works as the Constitution requires. The GOP support will provide the 51 votes needed for the Senate to pass the resolution. The House passed a similar measure in January, but it would need to pass this one for it to go to Trump's desk. The president is likely to veto it, and the Senate lacks the votes to override, so we'll just have to watch and listen. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
And according to a new report, after reviewing 11 years of published scientific studies, the Food and Drug Administration remains convinced there's no obvious health risk posed by exposure to radio waves from mobile phones. The finding coincides with the global expansion of next-generation or 5G networks, which has reawakened decades-old fears that radio frequency radiation poses a health threat. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, John, thanks. Almost 6:10 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update with John Stashauer.
Nathan, interesting offseason for the Mets. They fired Mickey Callaway, replaced him with Carlos Beltran, and then fired him. So it was Luis Rojas who welcomed in Met pitchers and catchers in Port St. Lucie. With Jacob deGrom and Pete Alonso, there are certainly reasons to like the Mets' chances this season. A key could be the health of Yoenis Cespedes, who missed all of last season. Yankee pitchers and catchers report in Tampa tomorrow. Much-needed win for the Nets. They had been struggling on the road. The Pacers came in having lost their last 5. 2 Joe Harris buckets in the final minute, and then the Nets came up with an even bigger one.
They get it to Dinwiddie up top. 7 seconds to go. One-on-one with Brogdon. Steps right. 20-footer is scored! With 3.8 seconds to go, Brooklyn takes the lead.
Nets radio had it as the Nets topped the Pacers 106-105. Dinwiddie scored 21. 13 of those from the free throw line. He added 11 assists. The Nets will host Toronto tomorrow. The Raptors last night won their 15th game in a row. Islanders with a big win, knocking off the league-leading Capitals 5-3 in D.C. Anthony Beauvillier with 2 early goals. Interesting NFL offseason with Tom Brady's future in doubt. Drew Brees unsigned. There are questions about Dak Prescott and Cam Newton. And now it's official that 16-year vet Phillip Rivers will not return to the Chargers, the only team he has played for. He has not indicated he has any desire to retire. And the Chargers could now be a team looking for a new quarterback. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
And John, with the NFL in the offseason, changes could be coming to the baseball postseason. The New York Post reports MLB's thinking of expanding the playoffs from 10 clubs to 14, nearly half the 30 teams in the league, and allowing 4 wild cards in each league. That would be up from 2. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon N.A. Member FDIC.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy. Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £14 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
There's just 3 days to go until Valentine's Day. So head to your local Asda in London. We've got extra special bouquets from just £15. Gifts they'll adore at prices you'll love. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Available from 12th of February.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out,
it's time to search out On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Manus Craney.
Pad Manathan, he's the CEO of Aquapart. Welcome to the show. This time last year, the PIF announced their intention to step deeper into you. Where are we with that scaling up of the relationship with PIF?
So PIF this time last year, this event actually, His Excellency Yusuf Ramayan actually announced that they were looking at increasing their shareholding. PIF actually came into Aquapart several years ago through a fund. They had 15%. Then PIF took a direct stake in us, 10%. During the latter part of last year, they consolidated that into a direct 25% holding. We are now working, as he announced it, to increase that shareholding to 45%. We expect to conclude that sometime, hopefully this quarter, early into the next quarter.
So when they have 45%, what does that mean for the business? What's that going to mean with you and Al Ramin?
It makes us much stronger.
But is it going to push the business further along?
Of course it will, because it allows us not only improves our credit capacity, but it also allows us to tap into PIF's own portfolio companies, its network of relationships. Not just financial, but technical relationships, technology providers. So I think it's a very, very strong, powerful signal. It allows us to truly become a national champion and grow with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, 617 on Wall Street. And Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check of the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. Jerome Powell testifies before Congress today. The The Fed chairman is expected to stick to the script and express confidence in the U.S. economic outlook and the Fed's current policy setting. Bloomberg News has learned T-Mobile may win court approval for its $26 billion takeover of Sprint. That would defeat a state-led lawsuit trying to block the deal on antitrust concerns. The coronavirus death toll rose above 1,000. As the U.S. reported its 13th infection, President Trump said he believes warm weather will eventually curb the spread of the disease. And Bernie Sanders is favored to win in today's New Hampshire primary. Independents are expected to be a wild card in the race. They make up 42% of registered voters in the state. For news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
And thank you. S&P futures up 8.5 points this morning. Dow futures up 77. NASDAQ futures up 41. The DAX in Germany's up 0.9%. 10-year Treasury down 4/30 seconds. Yield 1.58%. Yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.8% or 87 cents at $50.45 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.5% or $7.50 at $15.72 an ounce. The euro 1.0917 against the dollar. The yen 109.86. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's John Tucker with more on what's going on around the world. John.
And good morning, Karen. New Hampshire's first in the nation presidential primary is underway. Bernie Sanders is favored to win. And the Philippines has notified the United States of its intent to terminate a major security pact allowing American forces to train in that country. And a long-delayed project to build a new rail bridge between Newark and New Jersey has received, Newark and New York has received an upgrade from federal transportation officials. Bloomberg Sports basketball, the Nets beat the Pacers. Well, the Warriors lose to Miami on the ice. The Islanders beat the Capitals, and the Sharks fall to the Flames. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, John, thanks. We're coming up to 6:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and on this New Hampshire primary day, we say good morning to Terry Haynes, founder of Pangea Policy Advisors. Terry, the headline on the Bloomberg terminal this morning regarding today's vote, Democrats poised to leave New Hampshire with 2020 still muddled. How do you see it?
I see it very muddled, Nathan, frankly. My takeaway from markets yesterday afternoon into this morning was really three things. First, there's a significantly rising likelihood of a Democratic convention food fight thanks to these results. Secondly, I think Sanders is very likely to win the primary. That's not news, but it won't be enough to really establish front-runner status at all. But thirdly, for markets, particularly, the Sanders' front-runner narrative will overhang markets for at least a week because the next event after this Iowa-New Hampshire whirlwind won't be until the 22nd with Nevada and then South Carolina after that. So nothing's going to happen for a while, and that will stoke unease that Sanders is likely to be the nominee.
How much impact, though, do you expect Sanders' win in New Hampshire to have, given that so many of the polls heading into the later voting states this month still show former Vice President Joe Biden in the lead?
That is a narrative that is, I'm not disputing you, but that's a narrative that's coming to an end. There is nationally, first of all, national polls don't matter, of course, because you've got a situation here where state-by-state primaries determine the nominee. Secondly, the newest poll, which is, I believe, a Quinnipiac poll, for the first time shows Biden and Sanders tied for the lead. And so Biden's national deflation is following the state deflation that happens. Thirdly, I would consider Biden's slide to continue for at least another week or so. He did worse than polled in Iowa, and is already talking about losing New Hampshire. He might come in as worse as fifth in New Hampshire. I kind of doubt that, but that's certainly a possibility. But he will look like he has a little more life than he actually does later in the month. He'll do better in Nevada and South Carolina than he's been doing in the first two primary states. So he's not quite out of it yet. But the thing is, going into Super Tuesday, fundraisers and undecideds, of which there are a substantial number, will start looking for winning candidates, and that increasingly is not looking like Vice President Biden.
The top-tier candidate I haven't heard you mention yet is former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Where does he shake out for you?
My view of Buttigieg is today in New Hampshire is the top of the mountain for him. After today, his downhill slide begins. Buttigieg will do very well today. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see him outperform slightly. The poll of polls, the Real Clear Politics average, has Sanders at just above 7%, but that's not really 7%. When you take into account undecideds and what pollsters call house effects, it's going to be a lot less than that. So Buttigieg will look better, I think. But after that, you're going to have 10 days of nothing. You're going to have Nevada, where he's doing badly to begin with, South Carolina, where he's doing badly. Going into Super Tuesday, again, I think it's the next 3 weeks are periods where people think, okay, Buttigieg just had his moment, but that's not going to cut it, and we're going to start looking for somebody else. And nationally, he's still polling something like 4th or 5th, which is not a good sign.
Only about 30 seconds or so left here. In the past, New Hampshire's had a winnowing effect. Do you see any of that in 2020?
I don't. I see Sanders as winning, but not by very much, which muddles the field. I see even nationally 5 candidates at over 10%. And now you've got a new 538 report this morning suggesting that the second most likely outcome after Sanders, which they have a 2 and 5, is nobody at 1 and 4. And frankly, that tracks my view, which is 25 to 30% that we get a convention food fight.
Terry Haynes, always good talking with you. That's Terry Haynes, founder of Pangea Policy Advisors. And we have special live coverage of the results of the New Hampshire primary tonight on Bloomberg Radio and Television. You can hear and watch that starting at 7 p.m. Wall Street time. Ahead of the opening of trading at 9:30 Wall Street time, futures pointing to a higher open. S&P futures are up 7.5 points right now. Dow futures up 67. NASDAQ futures a gain of 36 points. You're listening to Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Passengers aboard a Holland America cruise ship are desperate for a port after Thailand joined Guam, Manila, and Yokohama in turning away the ship out of fears that some on board may be infected with the coronavirus. The Westerdam has almost 2,300 passengers and crew on board. We could hear as soon as this morning that a Manhattan federal court has signed off on T-Mobile's takeover of Sprint. Bloomberg has learned that the judge's office has told both companies that he is ruling in their favor. Uber has lost a round in its fight against a California law aimed at protecting gig economy workers. A federal judge in Los Angeles rejected a request by Uber and Postmates to temporarily block enforcement of the law that would classify such workers as employees with benefits instead of independent contractors. For now, investors appear to be setting aside their worries about the coronavirus impact on the economy. U.S. stocks are headed for a higher open, and the S&P and the NASDAQ will start out at more new record highs. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. to the Mayor of London and TfL. Every journey matters.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment. We put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. Would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Where are we?
The New Forest.
But I thought we only had the Mini Countryman booked for a test drive. We can't stay here.
We're not going to.
This isn't exactly what I meant.
Relax. With Mini's new 48-hour test drive, you can use the Countryman for exactly what it's built for. Exploring. Plus, it's an SUV, the largest Mini in the range, so you can pack loads more in.
Great. Where next?
Well, you know how I've always wanted to try kayaking?
The Mini Countryman 48-hour test drive. Visit mini.co.uk to book yours. Mini. Who's in? Test drive subject to status and availability. Terms and conditions apply. Participating Mini retailers only.
Winter joggers of London, it's chilly. Your legs are caked in mud and your nose is running faster than you. Then, get that heating on. You deserve it. Thanks to Hive Active Heating, you can control your heating wherever you are with a tap of the app, which could save you up to £120 a year by never having to heat an empty home. Buy today and get a free Amazon Echo Dot. Search Hive Heating. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and we're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures building on yesterday's record close for the S&P 500. In Asia, there's optimism the coronavirus is being contained. New cases appear to be slowing despite a fresh death toll above 1,000. We get the very latest from Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong.
2,097 new infections, but the smallest increase since February 1st. That stoked a big rally in stocks as investors clamor for a peak in infections. Also, state media said Hubei removed 2 officials, including the party chief. That goes to accountability. But a worrisome development here in Hong Kong. 2 infections in the same apartment, some 10 floors apart. That raises fears about the mode of infection. And more than 100 people were evacuated. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Okay, Brian, thanks. Meantime, billionaire Ray Dalio says the impact of the outbreak on markets has been exaggerated and is likely to be short-lived. The founder of Bridgewater Associates made that comment at a conference in Abu Dhabi.
We may get more clues on the Fed's response to the virus when Chairman Jerome Powell delivers the first of 2 days of congressional testimony today. Here's economist Dennis Gartman.
I would like to hear him say that this is going to be deleterious to the global economy and detrimental to the U.S. economy. He won't be able to say exactly how much, but to avoid any comment would be silly. He won't do that. I have great respect for Chairman Powell, and I think he'll comment upon what's happening in China and say we're monitoring it as best we might. Clearly, it's going to be detrimental. We'll do what we can.
And Powell speaks before the House Financial Services Committee at 10 a.m. in Washington. We'll bring that to you live on both Bloomberg Radio and television.
In Europe, the UK economy narrowly avoided a contraction in the fourth quarter. Gross domestic product was unchanged from the third quarter.
And turning to corporate news now, shares of Sprint are up more than 60% in early trading. Bloomberg News has learned T-Mobile is poised to win court approval for its $26 billion takeover of Sprint, defeating a lawsuit that sought to block the deal. Now let's get you up to date on how stocks are faring. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures They're up 7 points. Dow futures up 66. NASDAQ futures up 32. The DAX in Germany's up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 3/30 seconds. Yield 1.58%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.7% or 86 cents at $50.43 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.4% on $6.50 at $1,573. The euro at 1.0917 against the dollar. The yen 109.84. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thanks. 6:33 on Wall Street, and this news update is brought to you by Command Financial. At Command Financial, they're redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. To learn more, visit commandfinancial.com today. Now here's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. New Hampshire's first in the nation presidential primary is underway, and Bloomberg's Bob Moon has an update on where the top candidates stand nationally among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independent voters.
The Democrats vying for the chance to recapture the White House know well what's riding on this day.
It could begin the end of Donald Trump.
Fresh polling suggests he's the man of the moment. The latest Quinnipiac University national poll puts Bernie Sanders in the lead with 25% of support. Joe Biden has climbed back up to second with 17%, while Michael Bloomberg, founder and majority shareholder of Bloomberg LP, parent company of Bloomberg News, has 15%, though he's not competing in New Hampshire. Elizabeth Warren's fourth-place position may explain this primary eval that foremost is beating Donald Trump.
Whoever our Democratic nominee is, I'm in 100%.
Bloomberg Radio's live primary coverage starts tonight at 7 New Hampshire time. Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's not just Democrats campaigning in the Granite State. President Trump grabbed the spotlight in Manchester Monday night.
Democrats are now the party of high taxes, high crime, open borders, late-term abortion, socialism, and blatant corruption. The Republican Party is the party of the American worker, the American family.
The Philippines has notified the United States of its intent to terminate a major security pact allowing American forces to train in that country. It's the most serious threat to the country's treaty alliance under President Rodrigo Duterte. Duterte has often criticized U.S. security policies, despite the Philippine military's close historic ties with its American counterparts. A long-delayed project to build a new rail bridge between Newark, New Jersey and New York, known as the Portal Drawbridge, has received an upgrade from federal transportation officials that will qualify it for key federal funding. The new ratings were released late Monday as part of President Trump's budget proposal. A larger project to build a new rail tunnel to New York remains stalled as federal officials gave it a low rating over a funding dispute. And just days after New York's real estate industry reacted with shock to a state ban on broker fees, a judge has temporarily blocked the new rule. The decision put the new regulation on ice until at least next month. For tenants, it could mean a return of a costly fee that has been paid grudgingly for decades by renters in New York City. In a court filing Monday, U.S. prosecutors told a judge that longtime Republican operative Roger Stone deserves to spend as long as 9 years in prison for lying to Congress and trying to protect President Trump and other crimes. Stone is now set to be sentenced in Washington on February 20th. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, John, thanks. 6:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update with John Stashauer.
Nathan, Mets pitchers and catchers reported to spring training in Port St. Lucie with a manager they until recently didn't think they'd have, but Luis Rojas replaced Carlos Beltran. He was with the Mets last season, and players like Steven Matz go even further back with Rojas.
2013, we won a South Carolina League championship, and so that's a pretty hard thing to do. You know, go through the minor league season together and win that championship. So I have great memories with him. That was a really fun season. I learned a lot that year. It was a big step to my career as well.
Yankee pitchers and catchers report in Tampa tomorrow. Baseball is said to be considering expanding the playoffs from 10 teams to 14 starting in 2022 and considering the unique idea of teams with the better record getting to choose their first-round opponent. Thrilling win for the Nets, 106-105 at Indiana on a Spencer Dinwiddie jumper with 3 seconds left. The Pacers, 6th straight loss. Islanders won 5-3 at Washington. 2 early goals for Anthony Beauvillier. No goals for Alex Ovechkin. Still needs 2 for 700 in his career. College basketball, Duke was coming off that incredible overtime win at North Carolina. Another big victory for the Blue Devils, this time at home. 70-65 over Florida State, a battle of top 10 teams. Baylor is number 1. Showed why. 52-45 at Texas. Baylor has won 21 in a row. South Carolina is number 1 in women's basketball and showed why. Blowing out UConn. Very atypical season for the Huskies with already 3 losses. 2 18-point losses in the last week. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
Thanks, John. Coming up today, we get earnings from a little more than a dozen companies in the S&P 500. We also hear from Lyft after the close of U.S. trading. Here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Uber set a high bar for Lyft last week when it said it would turn a quarterly profit by the end of this year. Price increases are expected to be Lyft's main sales driver for 2020, according to Bloomberg Intelligence, with active rider and ride volume growth expected to decelerate. Lyft previously set a goal to be profitable in 2021, and while its market share is likely to hold steady in its core U.S. and Canada markets, its higher insurance costs versus Uber may make that goal difficult to achieve. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, thanks, Larry. So far this quarter, U.S. earnings are beating estimates at about the same rate as last year. 73% have topped estimates for earnings per share, with tech and healthcare companies leading the way. Financials and consumer staples are also posting big beats, while utilities, materials, and industrials are reporting the biggest misses on Wall Street. It's just before 6:39 on Wall Street now.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Fed's leveraged lending stress test is a start to easing fears. I'm Brian Chapata, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. Ask just about anyone on Wall Street what worries them the most, and corporate leverage will most likely rank among their top fears. It's not hard to see why. For one, a growing number of well-known U.S. companies are now rated BBB. Even more ominous is the explosive growth in the market for leveraged loans and collateralized loan obligations. Global regulators haven't found a way to quantify the threat they may pose to the financial system in a worst-case scenario. At least not yet. The Federal Reserve will take a stab at measuring that risk. As part of its annual stress tests, Wall Street's biggest banks must prove they can withstand a wave of corporate sector defaults and outflows from leveraged loan funds that cause losses to flow through into CLO tranches. I wouldn't hold my breath for significant revelations from this exercise. A similar report from the Financial Stability Board last year acknowledged difficulties in modeling for a true worst-case scenario. Still, there's no harm in the Fed trying. After all, it's the unknown that's scary. I'm Brian Chapata. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg Terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. On the economic front today, we get data on December job openings at 10 a.m. Wall Street time. Economists forecast little change at roughly 6.9 million vacancies. Here with more is Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
In November, the number of job openings dropped below the 7 million mark for the first time since March 2018. Now, even with the decline, the number of vacancies continues to exceed the number of jobless workers. But Bloomberg Economics says the gap has been narrowing of late, a sign the labor market is moderating. That said, we're doing okay. Unemployment has been running at half-century lows. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. S&P futures higher right now by 6.5 points. Dow futures up 67. NASDAQ futures higher by almost 30 points. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right. Use it. To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
I'm Peter Jones. Lifting business performance is critical in today's uncertain times. But how do you keep up with changing regulations and rising demands? How do you break free from manual processes to raise productivity? The answer is technology that elevates performance and comes with industry-leading support. Over 1 million UK businesses, including my investment group, trust Sage to manage their finances, operations and people.
Elevate your business today with our free performance review. Visit sage.com/perform.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
To a network of news and financial information 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
The polls are open in New Hampshire for the first-in-the-nation presidential primary. With all of the action on the Democratic side, we have some early results as Bob Costantini checks in from Concord.
Dixville, Notch, and a few other towns actually have voted and sent in their results. And if you look at these very small numbers, the results so far are good for Senator Amy Klobuchar. She has been going up in the daily tracking polls here in New Hampshire ever since she had a well-reviewed debate performance last Friday night.
Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg has also won a large portion of the small group of votes cast at midnight. The Philippines is notifying the United States it will end a major security pact allowing American forces to train in their country. It's the most serious threat to the 69-year-old alliance between the two countries under President Rodrigo Duterte. China's coronavirus death toll now 1,016. Global stock markets are generally higher this morning, as are U.S. stock futures. I'm Michael Toscano.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow at 6:47 on Wall Street. Futures are higher this morning. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. Like you said, U.S. futures trading in the green right now, with Dow futures up 73 points. S&P's gained 7, while NASDAQ futures climb by 33. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.59%. Gold is down 3, and Shanghai rose 0.4% overnight, while European markets are also trading higher, led by gains in Germany and the U.K. Back in the U.S. on the economic front, at 10 o'clock, Fed's Powell speaks before the House Financial Services panel. And regarding earnings this morning, Hilton EPS beat estimates. Hasbro EPS beat the highest estimates, and look for Under Armour to report around 7 a.m. In deal news, Sprint is up 64% in the pre-market as T-Mobile is poised to win court approval for its takeover of Sprint. And in other news, MasterCard won approval to set up a bank card clearing business in China, and a $250 million stake in Uber is said to be offered by Morgan Stanley. Wrapping things up, Edgewell was cut to neutral at Citigroup. Cormark raised to buy over at Jefferies, and WWE cut to neutral over at JP Morgan. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's John Tucker with more on what's going on around the world. John.
And good morning, Karen. The first primary ballots in the 2020 race have been cast in the community of Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. The polls there opened at midnight. There were only 5 voters out of the 4 Democratic ballots. Michael Bloomberg got 2 write-in votes. Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg got 1 apiece. The 1 Republican voter went not for President Trump, but also wrote in Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg, who's seeking the Democratic presidential nomination, is the founder and majority of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. The death toll from the coronavirus has exceeded 1,000. Hubei, the province at the center of the outbreak, reported its highest number of fatalities yet and removed top officials. Now, the Justice Department has sued New Jersey and Washington County over their laws and policies limiting local cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement. Bloomberg Sports, the Nets beat the Pacers while the Warriors lose to Miami. On the ice, the Islanders beat the Capitals. The Sharks fall to the Flames. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, John, thanks. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're at 6:49 on Wall Street. Now it's time to check what's going on in D.C., where some of the top stories include Fed Chairman Jerome Powell beginning 2 days of Capitol Hill testimony on the central bank's monetary policy report. It begins at 10 a.m. Wall Street time. We'll have live coverage here on Bloomberg Radio. Also today, federal prosecutors recommending up to 9 years in prison for former Trump confidant Roger Stone in his lying to Congress conviction. And National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien saying he is streamlining staff after the ouster of an aide who testified at the president's House impeachment inquiry. Also making news, of course, the New Hampshire primary is underway with a new frontrunner atop the national polls. Bloomberg Radio and Television Chief Washington Correspondent Kevin Cirilli is back with us this morning from Manchester. That new frontrunner, of course, Kevin, is Bernie Sanders. How meaningful is this after Pete Buttigieg finally was declared the winner in Iowa?
You know, look, I think the perception amongst Sanders supporters is that he is the front runner and that he's been the front runner for quite some time. While there's been a lot of ebbs and flows amongst national pollsters, and there's been a lot of ebbs and flows in terms of who's leading the pack, Bernie Sanders has consistently remained ahead of the pack and with his crux of support. So the expectation is that he's going to win here in New Hampshire. If he were not to win in New Hampshire, that would be a defeat in the sense that he would not have been successful. For Buttigieg, if he doesn't finish in second, that would also be a loss for him. So Biden, Klobuchar, Warren have downplayed expectations. Should one of them emerge in second or even to some extent third place, that would be a different narrative than what we're anticipating.
So what is the narrative that we do expect going forward here?
Sanders 1, Buttigieg 2. Should Buttigieg beat Sanders, that's a massive show of momentum for Buttigieg.
And in terms of who could potentially be fighting for that third or fourth place position, does that give them any meaningful momentum to make the argument that they should be able to keep their campaigns going as we head into the later contests this month?
Great point. I think should Senator Amy Klobuchar not finish in third place, then there's going to be a lot of difficult conversations with her campaign.
We should mention that, as John Tucker mentioned in the news there, Dixville Notch cast its very first votes just after midnight, as they do traditionally. And the winner coming out of that small hamlet is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg Radio parent Bloomberg LP, Michael Bloomberg. How indicative in the past has the Dixville Notch vote been for how the rest of the state could go, Kevin?
Not that indicative. It's 5 votes. Bloomberg hasn't campaigned in the Granite State, but he's really banking that he'll be able to carry a lot of the states in Super Tuesday. But he also hasn't had his win in the sun, so to speak, in terms of betting.
We're having some difficulty with Kevin Cirilli's line in Manchester, New Hampshire, but we will have full coverage of the New Hampshire primary throughout the day here on Bloomberg Radio. And tune in later this evening for special live coverage of the results coming up on Bloomberg Radio and television beginning at 7 p.m. Wall Street time tonight. Our thanks this morning to Bloomberg Radio and Television Chief Washington Correspondent Kevin Cirilli. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. And ahead of that New Hampshire primary coverage, we hear from the chairman of the Fed. Jerome Powell heads to Capitol Hill to deliver his semi-annual monetary policy report at 10 a.m. Wall Street time. Questions over the coronavirus are likely to dominate his testimony. Here with more from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington is Michael McKee.
The coronavirus will be question one for Jay Powell as lawmakers try to figure out the impact on the Chinese and U.S. economies, and Wall Street tries to figure out if a rate cut is coming. Expect little clarity from the chairman. While there are all sorts of possible scenarios, the virus hasn't gotten into the data yet for either country. Much of the modeling depends on how severe it gets and how long it lasts, 2 variables with no answers yet. The possibility of an impact leads to questions about what Fed officials do when the economy finally does face recession. There's little room to cut rates, so what tools would they rely on? And given it's an election year, expect political questions about taxes, budget deficits, and the outlook for the economy. Questions Powell will also try to duck. In Washington, Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is 6:54 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
President Trump is asking Congress to slash funding for the Superfund program around the country, despite already building up the biggest backlog in 15 years of hazardous waste cleanups stalled for lack of money. Overall, the president proposed cutting $2.4 billion, or 26%, out of the budget for the Environmental Protection Agency. Trump vowed as a candidate to cut all but little tidbits of the EPA in a push to eliminate regulations he sees as burdening businesses. As president, he's called annually for cuts nearing 1/3 of the agency's budget. Trump's budget statement to Congress said his latest pared-back budget request for the EPA advances work on key priority areas while reining in unnecessary spending. The advocacy organization Environmental Working Group reacted with no subtle irony, saying the budget perfectly reflects President Trump's views on protecting public health and preventing pollution. He's against both. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
All right, Bob, thank you. Now, some other stories we're watching this morning. Boeing says it will take several quarters to return the grounded 737 MAX jet to the skies. The company's marketing vice president tells Bloomberg they're not going to overstress the system. Boeing still hopes to get that jet flying by mid-year. Intel has joined the list of big tech companies that are pulling out of the wireless industry's biggest conference. That's due to concerns over the coronavirus. Intel joins Ericsson, Sony, and LG in withdrawing from the Mobile World Congress. That gets underway February 24th in Barcelona. And ExxonMobil is cracking down on employee travel. Bloomberg News has learned that auditing teams have fanned out 2 divisions to analyze travel requests involving industry conferences. That's after Exxon reported its worst quarterly profit in almost 4 years.
It is 6:56 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report. Here's John Tucker.
There's more evidence that the growth of small business is being hampered by the tight labor market. The latest jobs report from the National Federation of Independent Business shows the biggest problem for small firms continues to be finding qualified workers for open positions. 26% of firm owners reported it as their number one problem. That's 1 point below the August 2019 record high. It's particularly severe in the construction industry. 62% of construction firms reported fewer or no qualified applicants. And there's every indication that the inability to assemble teams is a contributor to a lackluster performance of the construction industry. Reports of few or no qualified applicants were high in construction as well as manufacturing and retail. The NFIB survey was conducted in January and reflects a random sample of 10,000 small businesses. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
All right, thank you, John. Watching shares of Under Armour down more than 14% this morning. This is after fourth quarter profit met analyst estimates, while Hasbro is up 9%. It reported higher fourth quarter sales as toys based on Frozen 2 and Star Wars helped the toy maker overcome the fallout from President Donald Trump's trade war with China. We are watching futures this morning. They are on the rise with S&P futures up 6 points and Dow futures up 61. NASDAQ futures up 27. The 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds, yield 1.58%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.40%. And Bloomberg Surveillance straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
As the boss, I expect only the best for my office. Air conditioning, super comfortable seating, digital radio, and rear parking sensors. From dealing with deliveries to balancing the books, my new Citroën van, my office on the move. Award-winning Citroën vans. Like you, they do it all. With £500 off during the February van event. Citroën. £500 discount inclusive of VAT on qualifying relay dispatch and Berlingo vans ordered from 1st to 29th of February and registered by the 31st of March. Business users only. Full T's and C's at citroen.co.uk.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
This is like a puzzle. Can you make a call given the data?
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
American economic power and future depends on trade deals.
In many of these countries, we're still seeing people struggling.
Finance.
We're in this vortex of uncertainty. These big companies, they just sometimes lack focus.
Investment.
The markets have become a little bit too addicted to the Fed.
Timing the market is just so difficult.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City, for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, equities at all-time highs. China urging companies to ramp up production. Attention turning to the Fed. Chair Powell beginning 2 days on Capitol Hill, and the Democratic race heading to New Hampshire with Senator Sanders leading the polls. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Tuesday. Here is your Tuesday morning price action. Stocks at records, and we might add some weight to it. Equity futures up by 6 points on the S&P 500, firmer by 0.2%. Treasuries just a little bit lower, a little bit softer. Yields a little bit higher by 2 basis points. We approach 160 at 1.59% on 10s. And in foreign exchange, Tom, a weaker Swissy, a weaker yen, a stronger Aussie, a risk on till to this morning's price action.
And where are we at 10 a.m.?
Where are we at 2 p.m.? I mean, with this equity lift, we're going to have a great guest on in this. And don't spill your Bloody Mary, Lisa.
I couldn't take it. It was just,
Lisa,
where are we going to be at 10
a.m.
this
morning?
But, it's a New Hampshire primary. She's excited. They're going to be
I'm excited
able to count
about
the vote.
All the stimulus that's coming out, man. That's what's lifting everything, and it'll keep lifting it at 10.
And this is critical. All the news in the equity markets, John, and what the euro's doing weaker here, we're starting to look at 105 support for the euro. Weaker euro would be remarkable. Chairman Powell today, in election year, politicians are going to go, we need even more accommodation.
This is a Federal Reserve chair that does not want to do a thing. What I find interesting this morning is just the signal coming out of China. The leadership has quite clearly been trying to balance efforts between containing the virus and minimizing the economic impact. And what we've seen in the last 24 hours is just a few signs that concerns about the economic fallout are starting to ramp up. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology urging for a very urgent resumption to industrial production and an effort to stabilize expectations. That push this morning, really quite important.
Here's the strange thing to me. You have Wall Street analysts across the board downgrading full-year GDP estimates for China. You have this ongoing output halt that you're seeing continue. You're seeing deaths mount. And yet markets completely shrugging this off. Ray Dalio coming out and saying that he thinks the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on markets has been exaggerated and short-lived. Well, what impact has it been? We're at record highs. And what is this? I'm just trying to see, where are people getting this conviction?
I have trouble with the punditry right now. I think the uncertainty, as we heard from the medical people, is so great. And I don't mean to pick on Mr. Dalio. It's anybody else as well. But the punditry value right now is like worth zero. It's just not, you need to talk to pros with a sense of history and theory, and they're making guesstimates too. Can I just give you one tea leaf, folks? This is so important. British Air, John Farrell, quietly says Shanghai, Beijing flights, they delay until April. That to me, within the blur of this and the punditry, that's a single headline where I'm like, wow.
Tom, I think it's really important. You and I started the program yesterday talking about how important the week ahead was for some of these private companies, the multinationals, to restart production and get back to normal activity. China can start promoting that idea for the state-owned enterprises, but for the private actors to follow, that's a big ask. How do you get them to get back to work? How do you get the staff to return? How do you get them to ramp up production back to where levels were before the virus hit?
And this is so important, Lisa. The idea that they're going to quote-unquote do it, I don't mean to be harsh, but the language is, they're going to do it at gunpoint. They're not. Every report I've had from China is no, that's not the way it works.
Well, and I would just like to add a detail that I thought John Butler so well accentuated yesterday. Bloomberg Intelligence, who covers Apple and the big tech companies, he was saying the factories like Foxconn have ventilation that actually exacerbates the spread of the virus. They have extra ventilation to try to get out some of the materials that are used to build the iPhones. This is the concern. You have to modify those factories before you can have workers come back in order to mitigate the spread.
Let's look at the equity markets. I mean, we got a lot here, John. Is it right? SPX futures are record high right now?
All-time highs on the S&P 500 and on the NASDAQ too.
Close as well. December, John and I were working, 22, 23,
Are we going back
24
to
bottom.
December 2018?
Yeah, and then there was a crater, and there was a whole bunch of notes that said get on board, but there was one note that had the courage to get on board and also mention magnitude. And he said up 20%, and after everybody picked themselves up off the floor laughing, said, Ben Laidler, you're out of your mind.
I remember it. This crazy guy turns up from HSBC and starts talking about massive upside in 2019, and everyone's looking at him like he's crazy, including me. I'm really pleased to say that the former chief equity strategist of HSBC and now the CEO of Tower Hudson Research, Ben Laidler, joins us on the phone. Ben, a fantastic call through 2019. And as Tom and I and Lisa have been discussing for weeks, months, if not years now, the courage to stay invested when everybody is obsessed with the downside risk. Ben, how important is that story right now?
Yeah, very. I mean, to Tom's point, I don't really know how the coronavirus thing, pans out, right? We have some sort of historical precedent, but ultimately, I think markets are sort of going to be fine here, right? I mean, I think the global business cycle is sort of stabilizing. Whether the coronavirus, delays that a quarter, and whether we need a bit more policy stimulus, I don't know. But ultimately, I think this is a macro narrative of a sort of stabilization of GDP, a stabilization of earnings. particularly in the U.S. I mean, the U.S. earnings recession, I think, is now over with the fourth quarter after 3 quarters of negative earnings. And I think valuations, which people think are super expensive, I actually think I can sit here for 10 minutes and justify them. I think they're very well supported by a whole bunch of reasons, and this narrative that they're very expensive versus history, I think just, is sort of a little bit intellectually lazy and misses the fact that, we now have a huge tech sector, the bond yields are very low, that the U.S. is growing more than any other developed market out there, and the Fed can still cut rates if it wants to. No one else can.
Well, let's stress test that intellectual laziness, shall we, a little bit, Ben. I won't be as brutal as you. I think there's a lot of reasons to be cautious, to be less constructive, to be not the big Uber bull that we saw perhaps through parts of 2019. What did they get wrong, though, Ben? I don't want to call them the doom crew, because I think their worries are rational. They're well-reasoned. Yep. What did they get wrong, though, Ben?
Yeah, so I think what are the two big risks out there today? Because they're the same as they were back in Q4 18, right? I mean, which is that we get a big economic slowdown, and all the focus is on China, right? That's 30-40% of global GDP growth. It's reasonably opaque. We think they have the policy flexibility, but they also have a lot of debt, right? So that and the coronavirus just plays right into that again. So, China and how that feeds into the global economy is a big one. And the amount of policy flexibility there is out there globally. And that's obviously been getting less and less over the years. So people have been getting more and more worried about it. The Fed has more than anybody else. Negative rates in Europe and essentially in Japan. Those are the two issues. It's policy flexibility and global growth.
I want to pick up on the policy flexibility. How much is your bullish call hinged on more stimulus from both the Fed and the PBOC?
The PBOC, I think, is going to introduce, liquidity and credit measures here to support, GDP at current levels. But I think that's very coronavirus driven. In terms of the Fed, I think the Fed just needs to be flexible. I mean, why did we get this big sell-off in Q4 18? A big part of that was, people thinking the Fed was making a policy mistake by staying overly cautious for too long. So, I think, the Fed's just cut 3 times here. Now they're on hold for the moment. I think they just need to be, flexible and GDP growth in the U.S. is still above potential.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that. And the Fed's just cut 3 times. So I think there's a lot of sort of insurance out there for GDP growth and frankly for U.S. earnings. I mean, not to dwell on U.S. earnings, but we're going to get 1% earnings growth this quarter, which doesn't sound like very much, but it comes with a 40% negative drag from the energy sector and a 5 percentage point negative drag from international stocks. So domestic corporate USA,
right? Well said.
I would argue is in pretty rude health right now.
Ben, what did Tower Hudson? You call on a bunch of fancy people that you're probably calling on Henry and Meghan over in Vancouver, for all I know. But Ben, the fancy people, are they overowned in equities or not? I mean, are they all in on this bull market? Or are you finding real skepticism out there?
Yeah, there is a lot of skepticism. I mean, I think there's a lot of sort of tourists in equities, people that have sort of been sucked into equities but don't have very much conviction. It's that classic sort of fear of missing out trade. So, there's a lot of there's not a lot of conviction. A and B, I think a lot of people are on the wrong stuff. A lot of people in core techs run away from a lot of people. They're very nervous about chasing it. And there's this sort of siren call of sort of international equities versus the U.S. I mean, how can the U.S. just keep outperforming year after year? Well, I would make the case that it can again this year, right? I think growth expectations outside the U.S. are too high.
John, are we allowed to have someone this bullish on? I mean, are we allowed?
Well, we have to offset some of the bearishness at the same time, don't we?
There are a lot of people who agree with him. And Ben, does that make you worried that a lot of people actually agree that it is time to stay invested and invest more?
You're definitely not going to make it. We made 30% last year, right? I mean, that was a complete aberration. I'm essentially arguing that the U.S. equities are going to move with earnings here, right? I mean, we have a U.S. earnings recovery which is going to gradually strengthen throughout the year. I don't think valuations are expensive. I think they're well supported. I do think the world has changed enough in terms of tech, in terms of discount rates, in terms of tax rates, that an 18 times multiple is sort of the new normal rather than necessarily something to be afraid of.
Hey, Ben, we've got to get you back. Really great stuff. And I don't think we've managed to talk since the massive call that you made last year. So congratulations on just a stellar call.
Well, he's still up 10%.
2019.
We didn't talk about it, but, it's an
He missed
call.
about 10% of upside,
Yeah, he
didn't
failed. I put out on Twitter, he got it wrong.
Hey, Ben, thank you. Ben Lader there, Tower Hudson Research CEO, formerly of HSBC. Should we get some news and headlines worldwide? We can do that here in New York City with Bloomberg's John Tucker. Hello, John.
Hello, John. Well, as if Democratic presidential process weren't complicated enough, the New Hampshire primary today is going to have another wild card. Independent voters. Unaffiliated voters make up 42% of the registered voters in the Granite State. That's a larger bloc than either Democrats or Republicans. A meantime, Democratic presidential hopeful Pete Buttigieg made his final pitch to New Hampshire primary voters last night in Exeter.
New Hampshire, I believe you will help make me the next president of the United States, and when you do, I will work every day to make you proud and earn that support.
Senator Amy Klobuchar called on New Hampshire voters to surprise the nation by supporting her in today's primary. In a speech to volunteers in Manchester last night, she said she's glad to see her campaign gaining ground after last week's Democratic debate.
I know we've got something going on here. That's pretty obvious. But we've got to take it. We have got to take it to the finish line and take it to the country.
Well, meantime, the Democratic presidential race took on a new shape as the New Hampshire primary gets underway this morning. A national poll by Quinnipiac University showed Bernie Sanders overtaking Joe Biden in first place and Michael Bloomberg surging to third place on a wave of advertising. And Michael Bloomberg won the votes of the tiny New Hampshire community of Dixville Notch, which hangs on to its tradition of being among the first to cast ballots in the presidential primary. Bloomberg received 3 write-in votes, 1 from a Republican, 2 from Democrats. The remaining votes went to Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders. Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. And according to a new report, Tampa reviewing 11 years of published scientific studies, the Food and Drug Administration remains convinced there's no obvious health risk posed by exposure to radio waves from mobile phones. The finding coincides with the global expansion of the next generation or 5G networks. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg. Tom.
John, thanks so much. We're watching Euro 109.14, a 108 print. We're not there yet. It would be a big deal. Support, let's call it 105. Please stay with us through the morning. Lisa Abramowitz, John Farrow, Tom Keene. Good morning.
Rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Dear Cass, Sweet Pea, not sure what I did to deserve a love like yours. Still can't believe I get to wake up next to you every day. I'm so lucky. You make me want to be a better man. Mind, body, and soul.
Pork balls, fried rice, Kung Pao chicken, spring rolls extra fried, order 55.
Yeah, here. Happy Valentine's, my love, forever, your little boop. This Valentine's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
It's in breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, 717 on Wall Street. And Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check of the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. Jerome Powell testifies before Congress today. The Fed chairman is expected to stick to the script and express confidence in the U.S. economic outlook and the Fed's current policy setting. Bloomberg News has learned T-Mobile may win court approval for its $26 billion takeover of Sprint. That would defeat a state-led lawsuit trying to block the deal on antitrust concerns. The coronavirus death toll rose above 1,000. As the U.S. reported its 13th infection, President Trump said he believes warm weather will eventually curb the spread of the disease. And Bernie Sanders is favoured to win in today's New Hampshire primary. Independents are expected to be a wild card in the race. They make up 42% of registered voters in the state. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
All right, Hannah George, thank you. And futures this morning are higher. S&P futures up 7 points. Dow futures up 68. NASDAQ futures up 37. The DAX in Germany's up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds. Yield 1.58%. Yield on the 2-year 1.41%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.8% or 90 cents at $50.47 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.4% or $6.60 at $15.72.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0914 against the dollar. The yen 109.84. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. 5 things you need to know. Thank you, Interactive Brokers, for your support of Bloomberg Surveillance. Okay, I'm just going to go to have an Alarian moment here, John. Unknown. And I'm sorry, the unknowns are more unknowny than they've ever been. And you see it with these micro corporate announcements as they face tangible realities. British Air out to April on flights to Shanghai.
I don't think we can overstate how important the next 2 weeks really are for the global economy as some of these companies start to try and come back to work. As you say, still got some airlines that are delaying flights into April. Interesting news coming from this morning that various ministries in China are starting to urge those companies in the regions less affected by the virus to ramp up production and try and stabilize expectations as well. There's been a shift of emphasis, I think, in the last couple of weeks from purely putting everything into containing the virus and now starting to think just a little bit more, incrementally so, over the last week into containing the economic fallout and getting growth expectations up again.
It's not just airlines. Singapore could see a 25 to 30% decline in tourist arrivals and spending. This was announced to them by them, according to the city's tourism chief. Meanwhile, if you take a look at South Korea, people are just piling into bonds there because they're expecting the South Korean central bank to cut rates. Everyone's sort of expecting some sort of mitigating effect here, but how do you compensate for a decline
we don't
in
know.
tourism?
And as Peter Hotez said yesterday of Baylor, calling from Hebrew University, the acclaimed virologist said, look, he's not worried about Singapore or China. He's worried about Laos, Cambodia, some of the poorer economies, the more fragile economies of Asia. Just because of time, let's move on. I'm sorry, Euro, it's got my full attention. Madame Lagarde's got to have tattooed to her brain, John, a break of a 105 support. That's a huge deal.
Close to breaking down to 108. I think we're in and around 109 on euro dollar right now. Let me give you some numbers, Tom. The low on this currency pair over the last few years, the low on it, 103.40.
Thank you, I didn't know that.
The high on the dollar index on that same day was 103.80.
We're at 98.99 now. That's really important what you did. It's amazing, Lisa, how Pharaoh did that. He triangulated euro with trade bundle dynamics.
John's an amazing guy, especially when it comes to FX. I will say this.
Let's have a surveillance moment of silence for that.
All right, we did.
Okay,
So I just want to get a sense.
I never got to finish the thought. Carry on, please.
We guys have a moment of
Finish the
appreciation
thought,
for you.
John. Finish the thought.
There are various dynamics that get you there. Overwhelmingly, though, when we've seen euro dollar in and around the 105 break point, it's because there's been a global growth scare, with one exception, which was the dollar surge post-election of Donald Trump into the White House. Other than that, you need a big global growth scare to get the dollar to surge and for the euro to break back down towards
Way
parity.
too much explanation.
But
Lisa,
still, I think that the bigger issue here is what's going to bring the dollar down. And I keep going back to this consensus call heading into 2020. This has to do with respect to commodities, the price of commodities. It has to do with the emerging markets call that you're hearing from a lot of investors right now. And if you've got this kind of consistent and persistent euro weakness, what's going to drive the dollar lower?
And John, to your good math, we're making jokes about it, folks, but it's brilliant to take euro down versus a bundled major trade DXY. DXY is 98.99. The President of the United States is not prepared for 100 print.
The most important thing to get the dollar down is to get global risk appetite up, to get expectations about global growth higher. And the lowest point in the last 5 years for the dollar index is early 2018. That was the peak of synchronized global growth happy talk, and that's when we had an 88 handle on the dollar index.
What is the bond market saying about Chairman Powell right now? Is it delinked from his comments? I'm unsure.
There's a global story sitting at the long end. I think what is important, though, is this is a bond market that's capturing the idea of a Fed that is going to keep rates low and keep rates low for a whole lot longer without the risk of inflation picking up anytime soon.
Lisa, you're better at this than I am. How many people out there calling for 2 rate cuts? Is that a rare call?
It's not a rare call. I'm looking right now at Fed Funds futures, and it's pricing in 1.4 cuts by year end and 1.6 cuts by January of next year. That's down from where it was yesterday, but there is this feeling that there will be a consensus that there will be more than one rate cut by year end. And this comes even though you do see a risk-on feel in markets. I mean, this is sort of the interesting thing, John, to your point about the dollar. There's a risk-on feel in markets, and yet the dollar still is rising and strengthening versus the peers. And you're still seeing that bid into treasuries, an expectation for more rate cuts.
Should we talk about equities, Tom?
Equities, Ben Ladler up 10% from here. I think that's Dow 31,000. No one's framed that.
Worth pointing out that he looked for a 20% call last year when no one else really was either, and he got an extra 10 percentage points on top of that almost.
He said techs of value. That's a lonely call right now.
Yeah.
You know, that's strong words.
I'm trying to understand how much, though, that hinges on more stimulus. How much is that driven by the earnings story?
Stimulus?
No, fiscal stimulus is going to happen before the before the U.S. election, and Germany doesn't have a government together yet, so they're not going to get fiscal stimulus in the near term. So there's a question here: how much does that hinge on the Fed easing, central banks in around the world, and how much does that really rely on the earnings story?
I think the Fed has done a tremendous job of establishing a reaction function that is very, very supportive of financial conditions. And if I'm Chairman Powell going into this semi-annual testimony, I'm probably quite comfortable. Haven't had to do anything, apart from the asset balance sheet program that many people consider QE, some people don't. But I haven't had to do anything in the last couple of weeks. I haven't had to send out the doves, and financial conditions are still very loose, despite the fact there are some real concerns about global growth.
I'm still in cash.
Well, John, remember last year when people were talking about the election and heading into the end of 2020, and that was going to be something that was going to be a source of volatility? Here we are. We're heading toward the New Hampshire primary, the caucus vote today.
It's a primary, not a caucus vote. Come on, they're going to count it.
They're going to count it. Okay. But here's my question. Why does nobody care?
I don't know. I think they do care. They're just overwhelmed here by growth slowdown. I mean, the numbers from J.P. Morgan on, it's not a forecast, but the model of China GDP is stunning.
Have you seen Nomura, Tom? Have you seen Nomura for Q1? 3 handle for China.
What I'm seeing is the Dodgers.
Really?
It's pitchers and catchers. And do you know what they're talking about in L.A.?
What are they saying?
Mookie Mania. Mookie Mania.
You're on your own in this studio right now.
100%.
Mookie.
Who's Mookie? He looks so upset. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the in the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £14 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out,
It's time to search at On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
And downward-facing dog.
Loren here knows her downward-facing dog from her one-legged king pigeon. Well, you'd need to if you run your own hot yoga business.
Cobra.
But she'd prefer to be working on her warrior pose than on her finances. That's why she got QuickBooks. Now she can get paid, track income, and run payroll all in one place. Because no matter how hot the yoga studio gets, running her business is no sweat.
Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details. Intuit QuickBooks.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell in New York. Equities higher, all-time highs on the S&P 500. We add some weight to that, up 0.33% on the session. Treasuries a little bit lower, yields a little bit higher, up a single basis point on 10s to 158, on 2s to 140. In foreign exchange, the underperformance where you would expect it to be when it's a risk-on morning. Swissy weaker, yen weaker, Aussie just a little bit stronger. And to round things out in a commodity market, crude bouncing back from a 49 handle back to 50, up by 2 percentage points and change on the session. That is your market action. Here's your sports news. Doug Cass writing in. He says the LA Dodgers will rule. It will be a Yankees-Dodgers World Series in 2020. How do we feel about that, Tom? Tell me how you feel about that.
He's asking how you're feeling.
Vicious. He does this while I'm on air.
You're allowing John to ask you how you're feeling. So let it out.
It's a feeling. I haven't come to grips with it yet. I can't believe what we gave up for this. The guy in Minnesota was hurt or something, so we got something better. Derek somebody or Jeter somebody from the Jeter. Would Doug Cass explain why the Red Sox are taking in a guy named Jeter? I mean, John, there's no
what
analog.
Happened to David Price? The guy that you, hated a couple of years back.
We'll have a 2-hour special
on
the World Series later.
And then he won the World Series, and you had to take it back, and now you're upset he left.
Yeah, the gentleman from Louisville's on the phone going, what are they talking about?
He's not
Can
the
I
only
bring him
one.
in, please? We welcome all of you nationwide, and particularly in Kentucky. This is my most important discussion of the day on New Hampshire and on the Democratic race. And I'm going to do a disclaimer right now. You know that Michael Bloomberg is running for office. Of course, he's the founder of Bloomberg LP and this radio and television station as well. John Yarmuth comes out of National Industries money in Louisville 1,000,000 years ago. He did what you did if you were liberal in 1985. He left the Republican Party and wandered over to the Democrats as well. Speaker Pelosi loves him so much, he put him in charge of budget, which is a good and beautiful thing. And Mr. Yarmuth of Louisville joins us this morning. John Yarmuth, what is the state of your Democratic Party? Is it the Will Rogers Party where it's an ungodly mess, or can some order actually come to your Democrats?
Well, I'll tell you what. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm a Cleveland Indians fan, so long suffering, but we've been getting better and better, and there's always next season. Obviously, right now we're having some internal struggles, but I think what I pick up in my district and all around the country is that the only thing Democrats want to do is beat Donald Trump. And I really am optimistic that we'll pull together. And, if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, everybody else is going to vote for him. If Bernie Sanders is not the nominee, Bernie Sanders people are going to vote for the nominee, because everyone knows that, from our perspective, Trump is a worse fate.
You are in such a most interesting geography. Of course, your battles with the Senate Majority Leader, and of course, the state of an interesting politics of Kentucky as well. Is the prescription here the middle ground of Biden, Bloomberg, or is the prescription here something younger, hipper, like a few of the other candidates? Which way do you cut it?
I have not resolved that in my own head. I've listened to both sides, and I really hate to waffle in this, but I'm not sure. I do know, though, that the biggest motivating factor right now is Donald Trump. And so, as the Quinnipiac poll showed yesterday, all of the top 6 beat Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is from 42 to 44%. So he looks to be pretty much capped at that number. So I'm not overly worried about who our nominee is. I do think, however, that the future of our party is going to rest to a certain extent on who can deliver on the promises, the agenda they make. And I worry that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren will not be able to deliver on their agenda. Having been in Congress now, but this is my 14th year, you don't get that kind of revolutionary change in Congress.
So, John, 2 points you're making here. Mm-hmm. Winning and governing. And I want to just stress test the winning part of it. Do you really think a self-proclaimed democratic socialist can win over people in places like Kentucky and can win other people in the swing states as well? Is this a candidate in Senator Sanders that can really bring the country together?
No, but I don't think so. But I think what Bernie Sanders does is he brings a lot of new voters into the equation. And I think that's the mistake a lot of kind of conventional analysis of this election is people are making, and that is to assume it's going to be the same voting block. And it's not going to be. There have been 1.4 million new voter registrations in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania since 2016. Out of those 400,000 registered independent, 750,000 registered Democrat and 250,000 Republican. That's a 3-to-1 partisan registration advantage. That's going to be awfully hard for Donald Trump to overcome.
One thing I'm struck by, Kevin Cirilli talking about this, of our Bloomberg Washington correspondent from New Hampshire, and he was saying in Iowa, the swing voter, the middle voter, was actually looking at either Sanders or Trump. It was not necessarily a moderate Democrat, and I'm wondering how representative that is. In other words, is that really the swing vote is to a more socialist or more kind of populist tilt, not socialist, populist tilt, rather than the middle ground?
Well, I think that is, Lisa, I think that is the key. Those are populist voters. Those are people who think the economy, the growing economy, the new economy is passing them by, and they're looking for a government that's going to pay attention to them and to make the economy work for them. So I think that is an interesting voting bloc, and I think that explains Bernie's appeal to many of those people.
The state review is the Midwest, of course, the key states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and the rest. But I would really look at Kentucky as a really interesting mix of politics as well. How can the Northeasterners, the East Coast elites, how can they do in Kentucky right now? Are you going to sell Senator Warren in Kentucky, for that matter? Are you going to sell Michael Bloomberg in Kentucky?
Well, I think Michael Bloomberg actually would sell pretty well in Kentucky. I think Elizabeth Warren she's been to my district. She sells incredibly well in Louisville. She is a rock star there, and she would be in Lexington. And, we just won the governor's race last fall, and we did it based on the votes in Louisville, Lexington, and the Cincinnati suburbs. I think Elizabeth Warren would appeal very well there. So it's going to be tough in Kentucky. Donald Trump is still popular outside of the urban areas, and he will remain popular, I think, through this election year. And of course, Mitch has sold his soul to Donald Trump and is running as well. So you're going to have a tough tandem there running in the state.
John, quick final question, if we can, just on the budget, if I may, and not on the composition of the budget, just on the size. Is being worried about the size of the budget popular anymore? Anywhere?
I don't see it anywhere. The president said nobody cares about the budget. Republicans have basically given up as well. Mick Mulvaney has essentially given up, the acting chief of staff who's run the OMB and is a real deficit hawk. And I think one of the things that we focus on is, yes, there's sizable deficits, and they've increased under the Trump administration. But we've got sizable deficits in this nation, deficits in infrastructure, deficits in education, and some other areas. And right now, and we've had a number of economists across the spectrum come to our committee and say, now is the time to make those investments. It's not the time to shrink back.
Very quickly here, Congressman, the Louisville Bats, is it the best AAA franchise in American baseball?
I don't think there's any question about it. And we have a great stadium right on the river, baseball park, and we set attendance records every year. It's a wonderful place, and now they don't win much, but
small detail.
Cincinnati takes all our good players too soon.
It has been too long, folks. The Louisville Redbirds, always the best of AAA baseball. Congressman, thank you so much. John Yarmouth of Louisville.
Thanks, John.
With the Democrat with us this morning from Kentucky. Our future's up 9 as well. Right now, it's simple. Let me do it. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. It's brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, whose new School of Applied Engineering and Technology is meeting the increased demand for advanced manufacturing skills. More at njit.edu. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. Take your time. We've got plenty of data. It turns out that 2017 Equifax data breach wasn't some kind of drive-by grab for the personal information of almost 150 million Americans.
The hackers broke into Equifax's network through a vulnerability in the company's dispute resolution system. Once in the network, the hackers spent weeks conducting reconnaissance, uploading malicious software, and stealing login credentials, all to set up the stage to steal vast amounts of data from Equifax's systems.
Attorney General William Barr announcing the indictment of 4 Chinese hackers by a federal grand jury. Maybe your smartwatch can help translate what your body is telling you before irreversible damage to the brain sets in. As wearable technology fast becomes an integral part of our everyday lives, scientists are hoping artificial intelligence can find patterns that signal the onset of dementia. A video from Alzheimer's Research UK explains it this way.
Every hour of every day, our brains are generating signals that can help scientists understand the health of our most complex organ. By capitalizing on incredible advances in machine learning and pooling data from across the world, our scientists will now look for patterns, digital fingerprints, that can detect the very earliest signs that something is going wrong, so that in future we can take action early.
Researchers say dementia affects more than 50 million people worldwide. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan, Lisa?
Bob Moon, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let's get you some news worldwide, your headlines from around the world. We can do that with Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning to you, John.
And good morning to you, Jonathan. New Hampshire's first in the nation presidential primary is underway this morning. And Bloomberg's Bob Moon has an update on where the top candidates stand nationally among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independent voters.
The Democrats vying for the chance to recapture the White House know well what's riding on this day.
It could begin the end of Donald Trump.
Fresh polling suggests he's the man of the moment. The latest Quinnipiac University national poll puts Bernie Sanders in the lead with 25% of support. Joe Biden has climbed back up to second with 17%, while Michael Bloomberg, founder and majority shareholder of Bloomberg LP, parent company of Bloomberg News, has 15%, though he's not competing in New Hampshire. Elizabeth Warren's fourth-place position may explain this primary vow that foremost is beating Donald Trump.
Whoever our Democratic nominee is, I'm in 100%.
Bloomberg Radio's live primary coverage starts tonight at 7 New Hampshire time. Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
And the first primary ballots in the 2020 race have been cast in the community of Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. The polls there opened at midnight. There were only 5 voters. Of the 4 Democratic ballots, Michael Bloomberg got 2 write-in votes. Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg got 1 apiece. The 1 Republican voter went not for President Trump, but also wrote in Bloomberg. The death toll from the coronavirus has exceeded 1,000. Hubei, the Chinese province at the center of the outbreak, reported its highest number of fatalities yet and removed top officials. And the Oscars might have witnessed a history-making night on Sunday, but when it comes to viewership, it was one that the Academy would like to forget. The Oscars rating plummeted to an all-time low as it averaged 23.6 million viewers. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg.
Hey, John, thank you, sir. Good to see you.
You're quite welcome.
John Tucker there on the news update.
I wish people could see your face.
I wish people could see your hand motions.
Not missing Michael Barr at all. It's good to have you with us, John, as always. Let's get you some price action, shall we? 1 hour and about 45 minutes away from the opening bell in New York. Equity futures are firmer, higher by 1/3%, up by around about 10 points. Tom, telling you all to keep an eye on euro, dollar. Pretty stable right now, but very close to breaking 109 at 109.15. And to give you a feel of the bond market, Treasuries heading south, yield higher by 2 basis points. 159 is your yield on a US 10-year. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
With a Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. Bloomberg has learned the proposed sale of the New York Mets to billionaire hedge fund titan Steve Cohen was scuttled by a disagreement over a clause that would have allowed the current owners to control the franchise for 5 years after the deal had closed. That probably won't happen again. According to a person familiar with the matter, no preconditions regarding control of the team will be attached to the upcoming sale. According to sports consultant Mark Gannis, by showing a willingness to see the control issue at the outset, the Wilpons may actually reap more than the Major League Baseball record $2.6 billion. As was the case with the Cohen deal, no part of the team's profitable regional sports network, SNY, will be included in the sale. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr, brought to you by Grainger, America's trusted source for industrial and safety supplies. Visit Grainger.com.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Welcome aboard Europe's 169th safest airline.
You were like my 169th biggest crush in school.
Your total body age is 169.
The number 169 never screamed glamour until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of March 2020. £3,311.25p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures on the rise alongside stocks in Europe and Asia. Before commentary from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 11 points. Dow futures up 98 and NASDAQ futures up 44. The DAX in Germany's up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 6/32, yield 1.59%. The yield on the 2-year 1.41%. NYMEX crude oil is up 2% or 97 cents at $50.53 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.4% or $7 at $15.7250 an ounce. The euro 1.0914 against the dollar. The yen at 109.83. Sentiment among U.S. small businesses advanced in January for the third time in the last 4 months as owners grew more upbeat about sales prospects. The National Federation of Independent Business Optimism Index rose 1.6 points to 104.3. 6 of the index's 10 components rose. Watching Sprint up 62% this morning. Sources telling Bloomberg, right? T-Mobile is poised to win court approval for its $26.5 billion takeover of Sprint. Let's look at T-Mobile shares. They're up about 7%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Out behind our Bloomberg radio studios, there's 2 rooms. It's like secret doors. It's like at the Vatican. One of them is out back to the surveillance casket where they're going to dump me in it, years from now. And the other one is the famous room. It's called the Tom Was So Wrong room. Can I just tell you, John, the level of so wrong. There's a pink T-shirt in that room. I was so wrong on T-Mobile.
You used to go after the pink T-shirt guy all the time.
This guy showed up with a pink T-shirt. I've had the honor of talking to Mr. Legere about what an idiot I am.
You know what else is in that room? Triple leverage cash fund.
It is. Oh, yeah. It's trophy taking. But, John, I mean, I don't even feel qualified to talk about this T-Mobile Sprint deal, how wrong I was on it.
The Tom Keeney's wrong room is getting a whole lot bigger.
It is.
Has done over the last 12 months, that's for sure. Bloomberg's Scott Moritz joins us in the studio. Scott, great to catch up with you. Just walk us through how pivotal this deal could be.
Yeah, well, I don't think you guys were alone in being pessimistic about that deal, that the price had fallen, down to $4 and change from the original offer price. But this is a long time coming, 22 months in the review process. It promises to reshape the 4 carriers in the market, consolidating to 3, and then adding Dish as the aggressive new 4th carrier, should that all work out.
This story is amazing to me. I mean, on every level, because first of all, it involves so many assets. From the high yield bond market's perspective, $40 billion of debt tied to Sprint. And these bonds have been all over the place, up, down, really, really down, with people expecting Sprint to almost be on downgrade risk. And now we see shares of Sprint popping more than 60%. I expect that bonds, when they start trading in about 10 minutes, are going to be popping in a massive way. I'm just wondering, I mean, Sprint's getting a lifeline here. I'm wondering, is $26.5 billion, which is the amount that T-Mobile is paying for Sprint, is that an appropriate amount? Is that what Sprint's worth?
Well, interestingly enough, John Ledger, who's been on the earnings calls recently, has talked about how there might be a repricing of the deal because Sprint has lost about 13% of its value during this review process. So it's likely something will get changed. Not sure what. In fact, we don't even know if this deal, what the conditions are that the judge might imply or whatever.
Let's cut to the chase. Is my phone bill going to go up? I'm going from a fouropoly to a triopoly. T-Mobile's cleaning everybody's clock. Is my phone bill going up?
13 state attorney generals think so, and they thought so, and they brought this case. It seems like whenever there's consolidation, prices will go up. Yeah, I would, right. Obviously Verizon's has a sigh.
How did this get through in a there's a thing, folks, called the Herfindahl Index, which is like when you're a Department of Justice, you go, this can't happen. How did this happen if it wasn't supposed to happen? Is this about the Department of Justice and a Republican lean that says get it done?
That's a great part of it, I'm sure. There's also the fact that these are 2 of the smallest carriers in the industry and the 2 more aggressive. So there's a sense that together they might be a formidable competition.
Well, am I wrong that T-Mobile's not cleaning the clock of Verizon and AT&T?
I think those 2 giants do fear a stronger T-Mobile, yeah.
So going forward, why is it that the court is going to sign off on this? What has T-Mobile had to do in order to make this work?
Right. Well, one thing going against the court was the fact that the 2 federal agencies approved it, gave it their blessing. So it's hard to think that a district court is going to get in front of that. But that said, there is this solution, a remedy, it's called, that gives Dish some assets from Sprint. Dish is the satellite TV provider that owns a lot of airwaves and wants to put those into use in a new 5G network.
So they're affecting this merger to get bandwidth for 5G?
Yes.
I mean, that's the heart of the matter.
That's a big driver for it.
Did they do this transaction so Verizon and AT&T couldn't do it?
Verizon's had its eyes on Dish and those airwaves for a long time. That deal never got done. In the hands of T-Mobile, those airwaves will probably get to the market quicker.
What's a phone bill in the United Kingdom? How much is a typical person in London? What do they spend per month on a phone bill?
I mean, we're guessing here. You know that, and we're just throwing numbers out. £50, I would say maybe.
It's like, why are we so expensive? Besides, I've got every child, the dog, vet bill's phone bill. I'm doing a package plan with Leger with a dog.
With his AirPods, right?
The AirPods is separate. But why are our bills more than so many others?
It's a great question. Our structure has been different. I think in Europe you have a prepaid plan where you buy by the minute before you can use those minutes, that sort of thing.
Scott, thank you.
You're welcome.
Greatly appreciate it.
Apparently Ofcom, the industry regulator in the UK, has revealed the average mobile phone bill is now £45.60 pence
Wow.
per month.
It's like you give it away.
That's awesome.
Do you have a British cell phone or do you have an American one?
So I did have a British cell phone and then put it down to the lowest possible monthly charge of something like £5 a month. I have a US cell phone, of course.
I mean, cash flow's over in China, and I said, "Can I pick up your cell phone bill because I'm picking up everybody else's?" And he said, "Dad, I'm only paying $5 a month."
Hold on a second. I would say it's not that much more expensive in the U.S. because right now the average monthly cell phone bill in 2018 in the U.S. was $114 a month. So it's actually not that far.
Is how much?
$114 a month.
God, that's a lot. Come on,
it is a lot.
Cable's at 130. How do you get 50 to 115? That's not a big difference.
It's a big difference. I mean, Lisa, where do you have 5 cell phones?
15, did you say, or 50?
50. Right, cable's at 130. You said the average bill is 115.
Okay.
Scott Moritz is looking at
it's a pretty big. It's half price.
You argue like this all the time, Scott
Yes, we
Moritz.
do.
Thank you so much
it's
for
half
making
price,
this
but still.
Thank you.
But do you actually get more in the UK?
You can get
the same
you can
thing.
get the unlimited text, unlimited calls bundle if you wish.
I got a bundle thing. I'm saving so much with the carrier I'm with now because I get a bundle thing, and what put it over was vet bill.
Excuse my ignorance, but are there fewer or more carriers? In other words, is there more competition?
The problem we're discussing, they have the same problem in Europe. Whether you should have 4, whether we should consolidate down to 3. And a big argument is that many of these same providers are also the ones that are building out the 5G networks.
They're going to have to do that here too. I mean, that's the whole logic behind the T-Mobile Sprint consolidation.
Precisely.
They're saying.
The same argument taking place in Europe. And we're done with this story.
It's interesting.
Okay. Equity futures doing okay. Stocks, all-time highs. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
They don't chant your name when you give blood or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
The first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene. Lisa Abramowitz with us today as well. Thrilled at what we see in the markets. If you believe in a bull market, you've got green on the screen with advancing futures prices in the last 20 minutes. Futures up 11, Dow futures up 101. John, we're on SPX 3400 watch.
Unreal, isn't it? We never really had a massive correction on the S&P 500. Back to all-time highs, Tom, ahead of the Federal Reserve Chairman's semi-annual testimony starting a little bit later this morning.
Doug Cass, very visible out on Twitter and Seabreeze. He went away from the techs here a week ago or so, and I know he's back in with a vengeance. And Benjamin Laidler this morning over in London with Thorne Hudson, Ben Laidler making it clear he looks at tech as a value. When have we last heard that?
And looking for 10% upside on stocks through the rest of this year, through 2020. Important inflection point today, Lisa, from the Chinese, pushing more companies to lift output, get back to work and stabilize expectations.
Who? Says the government, and this is the key question, says who? Will companies actually do that, especially given the liability, especially given the fact that things like ventilation and other kind of infrastructure problems could exacerbate the virus?
Before we get to a good talk on international relations, folding it into these world events, John, I want you to walk through what you did an hour ago, because it's, John, did you know this? Some people don't listen to us from 7:00 to 9:59.
No.
They come in, they come out in that. Walk through the euro support, weaker euro, DXY. Folks, these are two separate series. Euro as compared to dollar in the blended major trading partner series, DXY. Walk through that.
DXY heavily weighted to the single currency, about 50% of the basket for the dollar index. But when you look at where euro dollar bottomed out, it was late 16, early 17, and the low on euro dollar was 103.41. The high on the dollar index back then, in and around 103, 104. Yeah. The major point to make here is that euro dollar right now 109. To see a break down to, say, 103, which is where we were in late 16, you need to see a real dollar index pick up, a broader dollar surge here to really see that. An additional point that I would make is that the last big global growth scare, 15, 16, euro dollar was in and around 105. So the question I've got for FX strategists right now, if you're going to make the case for significant downside from 109, it's a big case to make at this point.
I agree. The zeitgeist may be weaker euro, but I don't hear, Lisa, a lot of people going big figures south on their euro calls. I just don't hear it.
No, and that's partly because people expect this to be the year of the weaker dollar, and they are not giving up that call, even though it's not coming to fruition. In the meantime, one thing that I'm struggling with this morning is people are watching the yield curve and watching it flatten and potentially flirt with another inversion. And there's a story today on the Bloomberg talking about how strategists are saying this time really is different because it's just importing weakness from overseas. And we're taking that European weakness and sort of bringing it here. And that's what this is a reflection of more than anything else.
You wonder if Chairman Powell will bring that up today about him. I like how you say that, importing weakness, not only importing inflation and lower interest, deflation and lower interest rates as well. Let's do this. Let's set up a different issue of foreign affairs. As you all know, I adore it. John Farrow, the major thing with Gideon Rowe's effort is he writes with a big font. See John over here?
I know you love that. I know.
Even old fossils like me can read it. But this time is different. It's a theme. It's about coming home America, but far more, this is the love affair that we have on international relations and foreign policy, and that's exceptionally deep. Gideon Rose joins us now, the force behind Foreign Affairs magazine. Gideon, I want to go to the politics of the moment. The Vice President Biden, writing an essay for you, link New Hampshire and the vote today and the desperation of the Biden campaign into what Joe Biden wrote for you at Foreign Affairs.
So what Biden wants to do is to go back to the Obama years, not only when he was in power in the White House, but when American policies were more cooperative and trying to help lead the alliance and the international system rather than sort of aggressively assert just U.S. interests alone or America First policies. And the details of that are pretty frankly common across most of the Democratic candidates. I think that they all want to put an emphasis on reducing inequality. They all want to put an emphasis on cooperative relations with American allies. And the question is, will the world actually, first of all, will the Democrats get back in? And second of all, will the world be ready to let America play a role like it used to once it has gotten back its desire to?
Gideon, we always remember that debate of former President Barack Obama with Mitt Romney. And Senator Romney brought up the risk that is Russia. And Barack Obama turned around and said the 1980s would like his foreign policy back. And how wrong the former President Barack Obama was on the risk that Russia posed at that given time and the risk that Russia would pose in the coming years. What strikes me as almost insane, watching the debates of these Democratic candidates, is how little mention of China we get right now. Something stunning happened in the last 24 hours. The DOJ announced charges against 4 members of China's People's Liberation Army for the 2017 hack of Equifax. And this is what Attorney General William Barr had to say. This was a deliberate and sweeping intrusion into the private information of the American people. Today we hold PLA hackers accountable for their criminal actions, and we remind the Chinese government that we have the capability to remove the internet's cloak of anonymity and find the hackers that nation repeatedly deploys against us. Gideon, why do I hear so little from the Democrats on the risk that China poses to the security of this country?
Okay, first of all, Jonathan, I'm going to push back a little bit on what you said, because Russia has indeed been trying to play a major spoiler role. They have not just violated borders in places like Ukraine with force and annexation of Crimea, but they've just tried to mess with elections across the board. The Chinese have not done anything like that. The Chinese have been much more responsible than the Russians, and the threat China poses to American hegemony and to the global order is a long-term challenge rather than an immediate crisis. This is not an attempt. These were individual companies and individual actors. It's not at the same level as the direct Russian challenge. But the question of what and how we should compete with China over the long term is a really interesting one. And the big question that nobody wants to talk about is, now that China is so big and strong that it can't be squashed and can't be put back in its box, what do they get from that in power? What is the price that America will have to pay for withdrawal? We were dominating the world somewhat. If we no longer want to do that, we're going to have to give up certain things we want, either spheres of influence to other countries, or certain issues we used to lecture the world about we won't be able to, or various kinds of things. The question becomes, if anybody wants to deal with China, it's not so much what's your policy that's going to protect America in terms of the immediate Chinese threat, because we're safe from that. It's what is it that you're going to have to give China to accommodate its rise that you don't currently want to give them.
Gideon, let's clarify a couple of things. I've made the point that Russia was a risk. It's transpired that they were indeed a very real risk, and it's a risk that the former President Barack Obama did not acknowledge at the time when he sat across from Mitt Romney in that debate. Point one. Point two, these are not just rogue actors. This, according to the Attorney General, are people from the People's Liberation Army of China. This is the PLA.
Unfortunately, at this point, the Chinese government has almost at least as much credibility as the U.S. Attorney General, who has been a politicized person pushing an administration line. The question for American foreign policy is not just how to deal with the Chinese Equifax and a few bunch of hackers who are trying to get commercial intelligence and various things. The question is, given that China is such a major part of the global economy, is such a major power in the Pacific, can actually dominate certain areas militarily that we used to actually care about, what is it that we're going to do about that? We can't just confront them. We can't just bully them.
Gideon, the point you're making is to be pragmatic. I think that's an argument that's going to resonate with some people. But you've also made another argument there. Are you saying the Attorney General is politicising the hack of Equifax in 2017?
I'm saying that everything and everybody knows that this administration treats its foreign policy announcements as part of its broader political agenda. And I would look to other sources for objective assessments of the Chinese threat rather than official American diplomats and spokesmen at this point.
Gideon, that's quite worrying.
Well, it is and it isn't. It's not clear to me.
You won't accept the assessment of the Attorney General.
It's not clear to me that American officials have had a great deal of authority for any time now, and this administration has basically continued that process. And so I think that the markets and the world and your listeners are more than intelligent and mature enough to make their own calls on the substance without necessarily taking guidance from the White House.
Gideon, there's a question sort of implicit in the discussion that you're having, which is the policy response to China, whether it's national security or moving on to trade. And when we talk about the Democratic primaries, we have not really heard much on what tack they will take with respect to the trade war and sort of trying to take a harder stance with China. What is the prevailing line within the Democratic Party right now and how they plan to go after China, not from a national security standpoint, but from a trade standpoint?
So that's a great question, and the answer is there is no single line because there are two major camps in the party. There's the same kind of anti-trade forces that have gotten dominance in the Republican Party under this administration are present in the Democratic Party, certainly among the Sanders voters and many on the progressive side who see trade as having worked against America's interests. But the mainstream foreign policy and trade establishment on the Democratic side, the centrists and most of the policy people who go into the government believe that something like the TPP was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a wonderful idea that would be a way to respond to China by coordinating all the non-Chinese forces and countries in the region in an anti-Chinese alliance. So trade can be a part of your national security question, but the question that you're going to fight China on trade and security and everything else, where is it going to stop? Nobody knows what the Democrats are going to do towards China because there are different forces in the party pulling in different directions.
Gideon Rose, thank you so much. It is Coming Home America, just a rave review, including important essays from Graham Allison, among others, and Thomas Wright. Foreign Affairs, can't say enough about it. I'll do a huge splash on Twitter and out on LinkedIn on it. Futures up 10, Dow Futures up 100. With the news, here's John Tucker.
All right, Tom, thanks. Democratic voters who believe the New Hampshire presidential primary would produce a clear frontrunner to take on President Trump likely to be disappointed. Senator Bernie Sanders is favored to win today, holding a solid lead in the last surveys before ballots were all cast. Yet a victory in New Hampshire is unlikely to bestow national leader status on Sanders, as the other top candidates show strength in the polls in the next round of states. Up to 40% of Granite State voters are undecided. And the Senate's going to take up a resolution this week intended to rein in President Trump's ability to attack Iran without congressional authorization. That story from Bloomberg's Ed Baxter.
As Democrats and a small group of Republican senators push back following the killing in January of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, Senator Mike Lee says this is not about bucking the president. This is about making sure the process works as the Constitution requires. The GOP support will provide the 51 votes needed for the Senate to pass the resolution. The House passed a similar measure in January, but it would need to pass this one for it to go to Trump's desk. The president is likely to veto it, and the Senate lacks the votes to override, so we'll just have to watch and listen. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
And the coronavirus death toll has risen above 1,000. President Trump says he believes warm weather will curb the spread of the disease, as the U.S. reported a 13th infection, this one in California. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg Thomas.
John Tucker, thanks so much. want to focus on the equity market. Futures up 10, Dow futures up 98, the VIX 14.65. Strength to the tape. This is Bloomberg.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the...
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out...
It's time to search at On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary?
So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container. And then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Light up the life of someone special this Valentine's Day with the Perfume Shop. We all know nothing smells as good as the person you love. This Valentine's Day with 20% off second items. Treat them and treat yourself. Think the Perfume Shop for that personal finishing touch. Visit us in store or online at theperfumeshop.com. Offer ends 14th of Feb. T's and C's apply. Visit the website for details.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 8:17 on Wall Street. Futures are rising this morning. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. U.S. futures have added to their gains since the last time we spoke, with Dow futures now up 104 points. S&P's gain 11, and NASDAQ futures rise by 41. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.59%. Gold trading down 2, and Shanghai rose 0.4% overnight. While European markets are also trading higher, led by gains in Germany and the U.K. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 10 o'clock, Fed's Powell speaks before the House Financial Services panel. And regarding earnings this morning, Hasbro EPS beat the highest estimates, and Under Armour is plunging 13% pre-market after its numbers. In deal news, T-Mobile won the court approval for a Sprint takeover. Sprint is up 65% in the pre-market. And in other news, MasterCard won approval to set up a bank card clearing business in China, and a $250 million stake in Uber is set to be offered by Morgan Stanley. Wrapping things up, Edgewell was cut to neutral at Citigroup. Cormark raised to buy at Jefferies, and WWE cut to neutral over at JP Morgan. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And here live breaking news of your Bloomberg. Type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. Karen, this morning, futures advance up 11, Dow futures up 106. To us, it is distant. I make jokes about it. I say I go to China and I land at Hong Kong and I get in a fancy car. And Lisa, I go deep into China
to find
3 football fields. Yeah. You know, like the far point is a Bloomberg skyscraper. And we look at the same amorphous thing like, I didn't know where Wuhan was, to be honest. I mean, I never didn't really know. Or you look at Beijing as a sprawling city. He is east of the central district of the castle and all that in Beijing. Tom McKenzie joins us now from the district just east of the Forbidden City. That's the kind of granularity, Tom McKenzie, we need from you right now. Forget about the broad statements on this virus. Give us an anecdotal feel of Beijing in your Chaeyang.
So I've gotten into the habit now every day, Tom, of going out on a mobike, one of these bikes you can pick up off the street and go for a cycle during rush hour. What is normally rush hour, but it hasn't been rush hour this week, even as people have been returning to work in a granular, slow, pedantic kind of fashion, of course. There's a lot of caution. So I went and did a half-an-hour cycle ride today. I popped into a supermarket. There's plenty of people buying produce. There's lots of products in the supermarket. There isn't a sign of panic, but there's lots of anxiety. People grab their food. They run back into their homes. They get their temperatures checked, by the way, when they go into the supermarket to make sure they don't have a temperature. You go past restaurants, though, they are closed. And if they're not closed, if they're open, there's just a smattering of people inside. And I've spoken to people at Huawei, I've spoken to people at Baidu and Meituan, these other e-commerce and tech companies. Very few of their employees are going back. Most are working from home. That may accelerate next week.
Who decides if they go back? Lisa Abramowitz brought this up this morning. I mean, do they go back? Are they forced to go back? How does that work in China?
Well, that's really interesting. We've actually heard from the government today that they are making an effort to tell local officials not to put in place barriers to companies that want to open up and get their employees back to work, whether that's behind the desk or onto a production line. So there is that effort now, particularly as officials here in Beijing look out across the country. Yes, Wuhan has a very high number of infections, of course, and a tragically high death rate. But in other provinces, it's relatively low. There aren't big spikes in terms of infections and death rates. Where I am in Beijing, a city of 22 million, we've had 3 deaths. Now, that's 3 deaths too many, but it's still relatively small in the context. So it gives officials the confidence to say to companies, okay, you can get your workers back again behind their desks on a production line. And so companies I've been speaking to say they're taking it day by day, and they're trying to get people back to work in a safe manner.
I had no idea. 22 million in Beijing. Wow.
It's a huge city, and there's a question, Tom, what the culture is in terms of going out, eating lunch, getting your nails done, doing all of these services. People talk about the products that you can buy once people finally get back up and running and their virus scare is over. But what about all of the lost business in the meantime? Can you give us a sense of what the street life usually is like that is not right now like that?
Well, one of these things that you really get a sense of when you come to China normally is a real sense of energy and drive. And that is what is so exciting about the place. Whether it's Beijing or Shanghai or Shenzhen, there is just that incredible speed and sheer number of people and optimism normally. That doesn't exist now. It's a very morose feel here. There are very few cars on the road, very few buses. And people are trying to get back to work. But again, it's half of what it was before at the most. In terms of quantifying it, Rabobank came out with a report. They said that if you look at the food and retail sectors there, you could be looking at a drop of about 80% in terms of their revenues, around $125 billion at the top end, according to Rabobank's estimates. So it is there. You are seeing companies get back. Airbus, for example, they've just come out and said they're going to start production slowly at their base in Tianjin, which is about an hour south of where I am now. You've got Tesla and Ford, they've restarted production. Other companies like VW, for example, and Nissan, they're waiting until next week to restart production. They have to, of course, work through these supply chain disruptions and also the prospect of getting their employees back into those factories again in a safe manner.
Tom, I've heard from one manufacturer, US-based, with a factory in China, and about the amount of preparation that needed to be done just to get some of the staff back to work. They literally had to order thousands upon thousands of masks so their workers could return to work. Tom, just how much work needs to be done? It's not just a simple decision, is it? Let's restart things and ramp up production again. They need to do a lot beforehand.
They do, and that's really interesting you point that out, because Premier Li Keqiang is actually heading up the effort to ensure that there are enough masks going around the country. So you're getting automakers, you're getting likes of Foxconn as well, of course, the maker of iPhones. They're setting up separate production lines to produce masks. Now, Foxconn employs about 1 million people in China, so they're producing masks for their own employees. Some of the automakers say they're going to be putting those masks onto the market as well, getting them into society, because, of course, everyone wants to make sure that they do have the hygiene standards in place before they can get their workers back again and working, producing. Again, the government's come out and said they want these big companies outside of Wuhan, outside of Hubei, in those other provinces where there aren't high numbers of infections, to start to try and meet those output targets. And they've also put in place to try and speed up local government bond issuance, to try and get the liquidity, the spending, the credit in place for infrastructure buildings and the building of medical facilities. So that's all happening. But you're absolutely right. Just in the sheer practical terms of getting employees into work safely, they have to have masks. And at the moment, there's a shortage. That's why you're seeing the automakers and companies like Foxconn turning their hand to mask making.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Tom, fantastic to catch up with you. Tom McKenzie, can you imagine Foxconn making iPhones and now making masks just so people can get back to work, Tom?
Just granular here, and this is, aside from that wonderful vignette of China that we got from Mr. McKenzie, Under Armour not doing well this morning, and Dana Telsey's Telsey Advisory Group quantifies, let me get the exact language, some of the shortfall is related to the impact of the virus, which is estimated to cost 5% of sales Q1.
We're looking
That's
right now.
Under Armour.
We're looking right now, Under Armour shares down nearly 14% ahead of the market open.
But, they're not, I don't think they're selling in China. It has to do with sourcing and all that.
Supply chains are going to be a big focus in the coming months, that's for sure. Equity futures this morning, things are okay, it seems. All-time highs at a close yesterday on the S&P 500.
Still in cash.
Up another 10 points, positive a third of 1%. I thought it was slowly rotating out of cash.
What's that room?
As the year grows older.
What's that room called?
It's the Tom Keener's Wrong Group. It's getting bigger and bigger. From New York, this is Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary?
So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container, and then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Dear Cass, Sweet Pea, not sure what I did to deserve a love like yours. Still can't believe I get to wake up next to you every day. I'm so lucky. You make me want to be a better man. Mind, body, and soul.
Pork balls, fried rice, kung pao chicken, spring rolls extra fried, order 55.
Yeah, here. Happy Valentine's, my love, forever, your little boop. This Valentine's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
Do you do the same thing every weekend? You know, meet up with the same friends for brunch, browse around the same shops, eat the same Saturday night takeaway. Mine's a lamb balti with mushroom pilau rice. Snuggle up next to the same person and watch the same brain-numbing reality TV. Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Light up the life of someone special this Valentine's Day with the Perfume Shop. We all know nothing smells as good as the person you love. This Valentine's Day with 20% off second items. Treat them and treat yourself. Think the Perfume Shop for that personal finishing touch. Visit us in store or online at theperfumeshop.com. Offer ends 14th of Feb. T's and C's apply. Visit the website for details.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance. For our audience worldwide, we're live on Bloomberg Radio, 1 hour away from the opening bell in New York City. Equity futures higher by 1/3%. All-time highs at a close, and we shift another gear higher now. Session highs up by 12 points on the S&P 500. A little bit later this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, the Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell will begin his semi-annual testimony on Capitol Hill in front of the House today, the Senate tomorrow. We have a couple of headlines coming out from that testimony, pre-released ahead of it a little bit later this morning. I'll bring you two of the headlines. The chairman says policy is likely appropriate, barring a material reassessment of the outlook, repeating what we've heard over the last couple of months. The chairman also saying risks to the outlook do remain, and he's closely monitoring the coronavirus situation. And I just wonder how many questions we get on the coronavirus situation and what actually is the threshold for a material reassessment of the outlook.
Do these Powell headlines look like they were formed by committee? I mean,
yes.
You know, seriously.
Well, I mean, these are run through everybody, I'm sure, and calibrated to make as little news as possible, right? I mean, this is largely expected, John.
Important that when the Federal Reserve Chairman goes in front of Congress, he presents the views of the Federal Reserve.
John, virus could cause disruption in China? That's in the language? That's almost rude.
That's a no-brainer, right?
It's just rude. I mean, you know, the nation's flat on its back. We got to...
That's where we're at, though, Tom.
Yeah.
If the Federal Reserve Chairman said the nation was flat on its back, what do you think would happen?
Yeah, fair.
And to be fair, there are some questions about how much of the lost productivity in the first quarter will be made up in the second, third, and fourth quarters, depending on how quickly the coronavirus is sort of contained. But there is a question of how closely they're watching the China reaction, how close they're watching the economy of the world's second biggest economy.
In my youth, think 1978, this all changed. There used to not be a statement to Congress. And then there was a thing called the Humphrey-Hawkins Full Employment Act of 1978. And we called these testimonies Humphrey-Hawkins testimonies. And they were great. Chairman Greenspan said nothing, and Congress, maybe Phil Gramm would get sweaty in the Senate and say something. But other than that, John, it was a non-event until the financial crisis.
And I've got to say, at the moment, Tom, over the last couple of years, it's become a non-event as well. We talk about a grilling on Capitol Hill. What often happens is individual lawmakers make it about their individual constituencies and end up trying to get a campaign video that they can send out to voters in their districts.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
And it goes on for hours, and then it happens again the following day.
Yeah. Stephen Stanley, Amherst Pierpont with us. Stephen, let's go to the mathiness of this before we look at the other headlines. The chairman sees inflation moving closer to 2% over the next few months. Do you agree?
Well, I think so. I mean, the core PCE deflator has been the one that's running well below the Fed's target, and we've got 3 very low monthly readings in a row dropping out of the 12-month window in January, February, and March. So I think it's really just kind of a basis effect, but most of the other indicators of inflation have been running much closer to 2.
I mean, the statement, I guess, first do no harm, as John mentions, don't talk about the virus in an inflammatory way. What economics will you listen for today from the chairman?
Well, I think you guys covered a lot of it. I mean, I think what people want to know is what's the threshold for a material reassessment, and it seems to me the threshold's pretty high, and it probably, as time passes this year, it gets higher, because I think the closer you get to the election, the higher the bar for the Fed to move in either direction. I think they're very comfortable here. I do think that the conversation around inflation is very important, because there's been talk of them kind of changing the goalposts a little bit with regard to inflation. I don't think they're ready to talk about that too much just yet, but it is important to hear what they're saying about inflation and how they view that. And I think you're right that they want to say as little as possible about the coronavirus. I mean, there was literally one sentence in the whatever it was 50 or 60 page monetary policy report that came out on Friday about the virus, and the newswire headlines were virus takes key role in Fed's outlook, so they can't really say too much about it.
The market's speaking right now. We got a 108 on the euro right now, 108.95, weaker euro off of these headlines.
Stephen, there's a question, and I think I want to go back to the point that John raised, which is it becomes an exercise in political punditry on the part of the elected officials more than any kind of actual information from Fed Chair Powell. And I wonder how much that is exacerbated by the repo operation of the New York Fed. And today we saw yet another oversubscription of the 14-day repo operation, the third in a row that was oversubscribed, more bids from banks than there were available. And I'm wondering, a lot of people view this as a subsidy for the banks. How much will that be at the center of the questioning?
It sounds like it's going to be a big topic. I mean, there was a letter sent from a number of senators in advance of the testimony about that. So I think it is going to be something kind of a populist angle of, hey, you're subsidizing the banks again. What are you doing? And I think Powell has certainly been working very hard on making sure he has a good answer to that question, because it's definitely going to come up.
Are they right? Are the politicians right that the Fed has been subsidizing the banks?
Well, I mean, I think that depends on how you want to look at it. I think from the Fed standpoint, they would say that that's almost irrelevant, in the sense that they had to do what they needed to do to make sure that the financial system was running smoothly. If it's a small subsidy to banks, so be it. I think in reality, the Fed had no other choice. I mean, if they wanted to support and smooth over the repo market, the operations that they've conducted were really their only way to do that in a timely manner. There's been a lot of talk about a standing repo facility, and I think that if they were to go that route, it would kind of lessen some of this concern, because a standing repo facility would be much more broadly available than what we have now, which is just goes through the primary dealers. But it's going to take a lot of work to get that going. I mean, they have to onboard a whole new group of counterparties and set up all the rules and everything, and that takes time. So if they do go the route of a standing repo facility, I suspect at least part of the rationale in their minds will be so that we're kind of giving everybody a chance, so to speak, rather than just limiting it to the primary dealers, as is the case now.
Stephen, many people in this market think the Fed is conducting QE through its bill buying. The Federal Reserve Chairman today repeating his pledge that the Fed will slow bill buying. How do they do that without a market disruption, given that there are many, many people in this market, I'm sure you've spoken to a few of them, that believe that bill buying is QE?
Yeah, well, the only thing they can do really is to be very upfront and very transparent about what they're doing and give us plenty of notice. And Powell has started to do that. We got a lot of good color at the January press conference, and I suspect we'll hear more of the same today. But they just have to. All they can do is make sure that people kind of understand where we're headed, and if the market chooses to react to that, then there's really not much the Fed can do.
Steve Stanley, you're a dyed-in-the-wool optimist. You were brilliant coming out of the depths of the financial crisis saying, look, we're going to survive. We're going to see a banded GDP better than good. We had Benjamin later on this morning from London, who's very optimistic on the equity markets. He's calling about an earnings trough as well. Is it the same thing in the Amherst-Pierpont Woods? Is it the same, 1.8% GDP, and we're just grossly misjudging the resiliency of the American economy, and we get a 2-point-X statistic that surprises, say, the 4th of July?
I would say that's certainly my view, and obviously the virus situation kind of posts some clouds on the near-term horizon. But I do believe that the U.S.-China trade dispute last year had a pretty significant drag effect on the economy, and that coming out of that, we should do better. We've seen a number of better-than-expected economic releases for January. We've seen a significant improvement in consumer and business confidence over the last month or two. In the very near term, obviously we're kind of struggling through this virus thing and trying to get our hands around how much of an impact that's going to have here and globally. But I do think that at least in the first half of the year, if we can get past the virus, I think the economy can do a little better than 2%.
And to build on that, what does that do for the Federal Reserve? How do they respond to that, given the fact that right now people are expecting at least one rate cut by the end of the year?
Yeah, I think that will probably slowly fade if the data come in the way that I expect. I mean, the Fed has been very clear that they don't expect to have to move anytime soon. And, I'm on board with that. I think right now it's a steady with a slight easing bias, right? I mean, it's more likely if we're going to get a move in the next few months, it'd be an ease and a tighten. I think if the data do play out a little better than generally expected, then you just kind of move back to no bias, and potentially if the data's strong enough, obviously you could move to a bias in the other direction. But the reality is I just don't see the Fed moving before the election.
Where's business investment right now? Is there any spirit to business investment given all these unknowns?
Well, as I said, I think there was a significant pop in business confidence that came on the back of the U.S.-China deal. Yep. I think there is scope for a nice improvement in business investment. Although, if I'm involved in anything in Asia right now, I'm probably sitting on my hands again until we get our this virus thing put away.
Very valuable, Stephen Stanley. Thank you so much with Amherst-Pierpont this morning. Futures up 8, Dow futures up 83. Now with the news in New York City, here's John Tucker.
And Tom, Bernie Sanders made his final pitch to voters at the University of New Hampshire in Durham Monday night. The senator speaking to supporters ahead of today's Democratic presidential primary, taking aim at President Trump.
We intend to make him a one-term president.
Sanders is favored to win the New Hampshire primary, but holding a solid lead in the latest polls, and a victory probably won't give him national leader status, as the other candidates are showing strength in the next round of states. Independents expected to be the wild card, making up 42% of registered voters in the granted state. They can take part in either party's primary by simply requesting a ballot. And a programming note, we're going to bring you special live coverage of the New Hampshire primary results tonight on Bloomberg Radio and Television. That starts at 7 p.m. Wall Street time. The Trump administration's indictment of Chinese military personnel over one of the biggest data thefts in U.S. history highlights a key source of animosity remaining between the two sides after their Phase 1 trade deal. The Department of Justice announced the charges against 4 People's Liberation Army members over a 2017 hack of credit reporting agency Equifax, which exposed the personal information of about half of Americans. And the Wester Dam has been turned away by a 4th port as it seeks to disembark over 2,200 passengers after 2 weeks at sea. Thailand joined Guam, Manila, and Yokohama in rejecting the Holland America-operated vessel, even though it's not in quarantine and there are no cases of coronavirus on board. And $40 for a pencil? Yeah, if they're black wings, a favorite of John Steinbeck and Bugs Bunny creator Chuck Jones, the vintage specimens are going for more than $40 each on eBay. New versions are beguiling a generation of contemporary devotees with their pedigree and smooth as silk writing quality.
Tom, how many does Vet Bill have?
He has a lot. I've got my new pencil here.
How much does that one cost?
What is that? That's a mechanical pencil.
What is that?
It's a mechanical pencil, but it's big, and I lost my other fancy one, so I got this cheap
cow.
one.
What do you use that for?
For writing very important notes to John Farrow.
Is that what you guys have been doing? Passing notes back and forth. I'm glad you know.
Back and forth. That's so nice. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg.
John Tucker, thanks so much. John Farrow, just as a general statement, is the global auto business flat on its back? I mean, and forget about China, but you look at Daimler today. I mean, it's a side story, but it's not. It's like that's a big part of the economy.
Cost pressure one, got to invest a ton of money in the move to electrical vehicles. That's really hitting the German players as well, as they got caught up with a diesel scandal. And China, the market was growing, and now it's not.
China's not, but John, you wonder where autos are in 6 months, or for that matter, 6 years.
Really, really difficult. Ford under pressure last week. We saw that in both the equity markets, seen it in the bond market too. Let's get you some price action, shall we? Equity futures this morning ahead of the open, 1 hour away, 45 minutes away now. Equity futures up by 9 points, positive a third of 1%. In the bond market, Treasury's just a little bit lower, yields a little bit higher, up a basis point to 157. The open, 9:30 Eastern. 30 minutes after that, you hear from the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell, facing down the House on Capitol Hill. This is Bloomberg.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. You know, sidewalks can be a factor when you're looking for a place to live, with some single-family condo and co-op buyers hoping to find a home in a place where they can get around on their own 2 feet if they want to. And Redfin says New York City, San Francisco, and Boston are the top 3 most walkable cities in the nation, followed by Philadelphia, Miami, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Oakland, and Long Beach. Redfin's Walk Score looked at the share of daily errands that can be accomplished on foot, things like going to school, going to the park, doing some shopping, and it says walkability is also increasing in Omaha and Portland. But walkability fell in Baltimore and Bakersfield, California, along with San Antonio, Winston-Salem, and Charlotte, North Carolina, along with Jacksonville, Florida, Nashville, Fort Wayne, Indiana, North Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Anchorage, and Scottsdale, Arizona came in as some of the least walkable cities. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize.
A new day, a new skyline. Who doesn't love a city break in the sun? Markets, museums, and those little cafe moments where you just take it all in. But imagine if you could just stroll from ship to shore into a different city every day. And as dusk falls, your sanctuary awaits at anchor for you to dine, dance, or simply stargaze as you set sail from one shore to discover another. That's a world away. That's the Mediterranean by Cunard. Discover more at cunard.com. APTA and atoll protected.
Welcome aboard Europe's 169th safest airline.
You were like my 169th biggest crush in school.
Your total body age is 169.
The number 169 never screamed glamour until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months.
payments, £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of March 2020. £3,311.25p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said the U.S. Central Bank is keeping a close eye on fallout from the deadly coronavirus outbreak in China, singling it out among risks threatening the U.S. and world economy. Powell made the comments in prepared remarks he's scheduled to deliver before U.S. lawmakers today. U.S. stock index futures, meanwhile, are rising along with stocks in Europe and Asia ahead of commentary from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 10 points. Dow futures up 105. NASDAQ futures up 43. The DAX in Germany's up 1%. 10-year Treasury down 2/32, yield 1.57%. Yield on the 2-year 1.39%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.8% or 87 cents at $50.44 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.2% or $2.90 at $15.7650 an ounce. The euro 1.0897 against the dollar. The yen 109.77. And T-Mobile won court approval for its $26.5 billion takeover of Sprint, defeating a state-led lawsuit that sought to block the industry-altering wireless deal. Shares of T-Mobile up 9.6%. Right now, Sprint is up more than 70%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. For you pros out there, you don't look at dollar yen, you don't look at euro dollar, you take out the dollar and you look at euro yen. 119.61. It has been a stronger yen, weaker euro. That's something Global Wall Street looks at all the time. Kevin Cirilli could care less. He's up having a yen for politics. Maybe he has a yen for sleep right now as well. He's our chief Washington correspondent. Yeah, what is sleep? It's overrated. That's what Steve Roach used to say. Kevin Cirilli, they're in hand now. I would say the gentleman from South Bend had the level up. I was watching the various media-thons, and he showed up today, Kevin, with a box of donuts. I mean, that's really how you get votes in New Hampshire, isn't it?
I just walked into a local gymnasium here in Bedford, New Hampshire, Tom, where they're actually having votes, and there's donuts. There's Krispy Kreme donuts, and the local high school students are fundraising. Look, the thing that I'm going to keep my eye on today is voter turnout, because voter turnout was down in Iowa. And, I'm struck to see Democrats keep saying they have this enthusiasm. But, I across the street from where I'm staying in the hotel, the line is stretching around the block for that Trump rally. So the big storylines are that, Sanders is expected to win. Buttigieg is expected to come in second. Who's going to get third? If Klobuchar gets third, she's got a narrative and a case to build that she can stay in this thing to Nevada, South Carolina, maybe Super Tuesday. But if you're Elizabeth Warren, if you're former Vice President Joe Biden, a lot of question marks if they don't get third.
Kevin, there's a real question implicit in your statement there. People say that there's a lot of enthusiasm for the Democrats, and yet where is that voter turnout? Is it enthusiasm for the Democrats, or is it enthusiasm about getting President Trump out of office?
For everybody except Bernie Sanders, it's the latter. And I think that's really the case for the Sanders campaign. When I talk to the Jeff Weavers of the world, when I talk to the Nina Turners of the world, it's beyond just getting rid of Trump. It's an actual ideology in terms of how they would reshape American domestic policy, to some extent foreign policy. So, I think the question for Sanders will be, number one, he's got to win tonight because that's really baked into the expectations. But secondly, can he have an inclusive type of platform and a coalition with moderates? And so that'll be the really big, that'll be a question for his candidacy as he moves forward.
This is actually a really important point. Is it enough to just want President Trump out of office, or does the Democratic Party have to ignite some enthusiasm for something, for some platform, in order to get voters out and actually win?
Well, I really think it's a great question, because last cycle, Hillary Clinton ran a rhetorical approach campaign against Trump. And so, look, when I talk to Adrian Elrods of the world, they would disagree with that. They would say she did have policies and platforms. But top line, simplified view for us, who aren't political junkies, that's really what she did. So to follow that political playbook this go around, when Crystal Ball says that, maybe you need some ideology or some platform to give your candidacy some legs. The Trump world political orbit is feeling incredibly bolstered by strong economic indicators. They're looking at last month's job numbers. They're looking not so much at manufacturing, but they are looking at the direction that the U.S. is headed with China, and they feel emboldened by all of that. And so they're running a campaign not through California, but through Youngstown, Ohio, through southwestern Pennsylvania, Tom, as you and I have talked about before.
Does the show just move to Nevada? I mean, what happens tomorrow morning? I mean, I know you're not going to be in Washington until July, but
the show being Kevin Cirilli, right?
Media,
Kevin Cirilli.
I'm watching.
I don't know.
Right
It's
now,
been 4.5 years.
Senator Warren right now shaking hands. Senator Warren's shaking the hands of a Klobuchar supporter in a line wherever she is. This is Portsmouth, New Hampshire. This is on CNN right now. I mean, the show, Kevin, moves to Nevada, I guess. What happens in Nevada off of what we see tonight?
I think we have to wait. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think we have to see if Buttigieg and Sanders meet their expectations for tonight. Look at the Hispanic coalition. So much has been made, and rightfully so, of the African American coalition and which candidate will be able to do that. We're going to be hearing a lot more about that, I would predict, in the next 24 hours. We already are. But in terms of the Hispanic coalition, I would look to see if Buttigieg and if Sanders are able to unite on that particular front as well.
I recommend the donuts of Bedford, New Hampshire. Kevin Cirilli, thank you so much, and have a long, extended, and valuable day for all of us listening. He's our chief Washington correspondent. And Lisa, what's so charming about Mr. Cirilli is right out of school, he went right into the trenches of traveling with the show.
He's going to be, crisscrossing.
He's way grizzled beyond his years. The cynicism he's seen it all.
Yeah.
And he's like, not that old. And it's just very cool. It's like his third go around.
There's also a big question as he goes from Krispy Kreme donut spread to the diner. There's a question about how representative each of these localities is of the broader Democratic Party and just the broader populace. And I do think that there's a key question here. Is the independent voter, that middle ground voter that could actually be swayed to one side or another, is that voter looking to the middle politically, or is that voter looking to a more populist candidate? And I think that is going to be a huge narrative as we head toward November.
And just so you know, the Purple Finch Cafe, Bedford, New Hampshire, that's consultants get Krispy Kreme. What do consultants know about donuts? Remember Paul Sweeney, Krispy Kreme was a short if you were starting a hedge fund?
Absolutely.
I can get you 100,000 shares of Krispy Kreme to short.
I'll tell you, I was living in Fargo when they had a Krispy Kreme come out and start.
Farm Girl, they had a Krispy Kreme out in the Midwest Territory.
People waited overnight for a Krispy Kreme donut on the first day that it opened. Okay. I remember this because, yes, I was working at the local paper there.
On behalf of Boston 106.1 FM, may I suggest Krispy Kreme is un-American or something from the South, and that Dunkin' Donuts
is the way to go.
Is just the only way to go.
When was the last time you had a donut from Dunkin' Donuts, Tom? Come on.
Monday.
What kind?
Whatever. Well, speaking of Krispy Kreme in the South, it's a good time to listen to Mr. Laval play the piano.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
I've got my own place now, Money. My parents put up the 10% security. And when I keep up my repayments, they get it back with interest in 5 years from Barclays. And now we can do whatever we want. Right, Dave? We don't have to tiptoe up the stairs. I can paint the living room purple. Don't look at me like that, Money. It's my house. Barclays Family Springboard Mortgage. make money work for you.
Your home may be repossessed if mortgage payments are missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
As le boss, I expect only the best for my office. Air conditioning, super comfortable seating, digital radio, and rear parking sensors. From dealing with deliveries to balancing the books, my new Citroën van, my office on the move. Award-winning Citroën vans. Like you, they do it all. With £500 off during the February van event. Citroën. £500 discount inclusive of VAT on qualifying relay, dispatch and Berlingo vans ordered from 1st to 29th of February and registered by the 31st of March. Business users only. Full T's and C's at citroen.co.uk.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Full English is all round today, please, Kat. I'll get this, lads.
Seems the gaffer's unusually generous today. Not because the Reds won last night, but probably as he managed to get 10% off a set of Michelin cross-climate tyres, plus a free safety kit at QuickFit.
Can I get some extra bacon, boss?
Steady on, Danny boy. You'll be making all the teas today. Get 10% off 2 or more Michelin cross-climate tyres. Book at quickfit.com or visit your local QuickFit and drive away happy. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
You have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. Thrilled you're with us. Good morning, Sirius XM Channel 119. Particular good morning to those of you in the vicinity of New Hampshire. Kevin Cirilli and David Weston up there. Through the day, looking at the tone. Mr. Cirilli just mentioning the turnout. Will it be like Iowa, tepid, or will it be more of an oomph to it with the adjacencies of Senator Sanders and Senator Warren to the Granite State? We'll have coverage at 7 p.m. tonight. Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television as well. Lots more going on. I mean, Paul Sweeney, just as a side, I know David Wilson will get to this with futures up 12, Dow futures up 117. Under Armour with a miss, and they mentioned in the press release the virus already.
I think we're going to, this is a theme, Tom. I'm sure Dave will give us some more color, but this is a theme we've been hearing more and more this quarter, and it's something that we're going to see in I think some of the forecasts for certain companies and as they issue their guidance for the remainder of the year.
Lots to talk about. We're going to get to the U.S. budget deficit. It's no big deal. It's like $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there.
Yeah.
We'll do it. Everett Dirksen to join us here in a bit. Right now, in the equity market, David Wilson, what do you start with today? There's some interesting stories out there.
There is no question what you start with
Sprint,
today.
up
Absolutely.
With
stocks the most. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is quite the party going on. Sprint up 72.5%. It is the most active stock in U.S. trading, and nothing is even close.
I wonder
how did they not arbitrage?
Exactly. I was just about to ask that.
Well, because there was so much doubt about whether this deal would go through. You had all these states lining up in court to try and block T-Mobile US's $26.5 billion takeover, and it didn't work out for the states. It did work out for the companies. U.S. District Judge Victor Marrero allowing the deal to go through. Now, it's been in the works since April 2018, and the companies are saying it may get done as early as April 1st this year. So,
well, I can't wait to see the stories, Dave, of the ARBs that were actually, long this thing going into this final, days.
Absolutely, because you got T-Mobile US up 9.5%. You know what else is up big time? Dish Network.
Charlie Ergen.
You bet. Higher by 9% now. The judge's ruling is a victory for Dish because it's buying assets from the two carriers to set up a new wireless network. Sprint and T-Mobile agreed to sell those assets in order to receive U.S. regulatory approval for the deal. Now, beyond the merger world, you see Facebook shares down 1%. The social media company was cut to sell from whole at Pivotal Research, which said it expects Facebook's U.S. growth to slow. Now, this is unusual. I mean, data compiled by Bloomberg shows the stock has 57 ratings, and 47 of them are some version of buy. So not a whole lot of analysts going the way Pivotal is with its call. NVIDIA up 2%. Oppenheimer and Wells Fargo raised 12-month share price estimates for the chipmaker before Thursday's release of fiscal fourth quarter results. Now, both those firms recommend buying NVIDIA. Deutsche Bank also lifted its target price, and that firm's rating is hold. MasterCard's up 1.5%. China's central bank allowed the payment network to set up a bank card clearing business, and the decision is in keeping with the Phase 1 trade deal reached with the U.S. last year. So MasterCard getting access to China. Now we turn to earnings. Ring Central up 4.5%. The communications services company, their fourth quarter profit and sales beating estimates. I mean, you're talking about a company with like $14 billion of market value, Tom, so there you go.
Yeah, okay.
But on the other hand, you've got Slack Technologies down 7%. The business communication software maker didn't confirm or deny a Business Insider report yesterday that IBM will use its programs for all employees. Now, Slack had climbed about 15.5% yesterday in response to the story. Mass goes down 4.5%. The building product maker's earnings forecast for this year was lower than estimates. You mentioned Under Armour earlier. Of course, they have two classes of shares publicly traded. They're down about 15%. The athletic wear maker unexpectedly forecast lower fiscal year revenue, and Under Armour's earnings forecast was well below the average estimate. Contrast that with Hasbro, up 6%. The toy maker's fourth quarter earnings beat analysts' highest estimate in a Bloomberg survey. Hasbro benefited from demand for its Frozen 2 and Star Wars toys.
Frozen 2, Tom. There you
go.
I teared up at the Academy Awards when they did the whole international thing with all the different voices.
Yep.
You missed that.
I missed that.
I didn't. I didn't TiVo it. I saw it live.
A few more earnings-related moves. The insurer and money manager Brighthouse Financial up 4%.
Yeah.
The oil services company Technip FMC up 3.5%. The car dealer AutoNation up 9.5%. Unfortunately, though, the tire maker Goodyear Tire and Rubber down 2.5%.
David Wilson, thank you so much. Futures up 11, Dow futures up 115. Up we go. The VIX had a huge response from Ben Laidler earlier. He's formerly with HSBC, now in London. And Ben, just to summarize, Paul Sweeney up 10% in the market, and he considers tech as a broader value play. Mr. Laidler suggested earnings have troughed. as they say.
Troughed in the first quarter. And they're still looking for, close to 10% growth for the year, so there better be some acceleration through the end of the year, Tom.
We got Jack Fitzpatrick here on the debt. Why don't you bring him in?
Yeah, let's bring in Jack Fitzpatrick, talking about the budget. President Trump issued, introduced his budget for fiscal 2021. And if you're in the defense world, you're happy. Everywhere else, not so much. So, Jack, what are some of the key takeaways as we kind of start to parse through the Trump budget for fiscal 2021?
Yeah, so this budget got a relatively chilly reception on the Hill. It proposed a lot of cuts that had previously been rejected. It projected to balance the budget in about 15 years, but that depended on growth estimates of about 3% GDP growth, which are way out of the mainstream. In fact, it even really led to projected a long-term, more or less freeze on defense, as big mandatory programs like Social Security and Medicare are projected to grow. A lot of the discretionary stuff gets squeezed out. And if you look at it as a percentage of GDP, a lot of the investments that Congress looks to make, even in the military, over the long term would shrink.
I've got my chart of the year from a year ago. Maybe it's 2 years now. Time's marching on. And, Jack, it's the twin deficits. And the bottom line is if you add up the deficit to GDP of the fiscal side, the deficit on the trade side to GDP, we're on the edge of 1985 and Reagan. I mean, we were apoplectic then. Why aren't we apoplectic now about modeled $1.3 trillion deficits as far as my life can see?
So as far as I can tell, the big picture discussion in the Capitol and the administration, people are less concerned than they otherwise would be about trillion-dollar deficits, largely because of low interest rates and the fact that we haven't seen these deficits already triggering significant inflation. Not that long ago, Jerome Powell came to Capitol Hill and said, we foresee interest rates staying low for the long-term future. So a lot of lawmakers are saying, even if we disagree with this budget, we feel like we have room to make the investments that we want to make.
Paul, I'm looking at the CBO summary of all this, and their GDP number away from the president's 3% is 1.7%, and the 10-year yield goes out to 3.1% a million years from now.
Jack, so give us a sense of how this really plays out. So we've got what the Trump administration is proposing. Give us a sense of how the sausage is really made as it relates to the budget.
Yeah, so this is more of a political document, really maybe than ever, and definitely more than it is, it's not a piece of legislation. In fact, the Senate Budget Committee is going to skip what they would usually do with a hearing with the director of OMB. The budget Republican chairman Mike Enzi said that these hearings turn into really just a political debate, so he's skipping it entirely. Appropriators are going to work through the numbers that they have set through the budget caps agreement that was agreed to last year. Largely, this document is going to be ignored, other than anything where Trump might bypass Congress when it comes to the border wall and he's transferring money or withholding funds from Ukraine. Those are the areas where Democrats are concerned that they are not necessarily entirely in power, and Trump has a history of sort of going around them. But largely, the appropriators are going to do their work and probably not pay a ton of attention to this budget proposal.
So as we think about the budget for the next year or two, is there bipartisan support for maybe, just some growth in spending, and also for where we need a little bit more austerity?
Yeah, so when they came up with that budget caps agreement last year, they gave a pretty big boost from fiscal 19 to 20, and then really a very small increase from fiscal 20 to 21 in discretionary spending. Of course, big mandatory programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid are really on their own track, and that's not something Congress can easily change. The big question will be fiscal 22, when there's no more budget cap, there's no more statutory set on how much money they will be spending. So there'll be sort of bigger, broader questions for lawmakers to start thinking about what the spending levels will be, at least on discretionary spending in fiscal 2022.
Jack, thank you so much. Jack Fitzpatrick on something we haven't talked enough about, our debt and our deficit. Massive shout out in Fargo. Tyler out on Twitter. I think, Lisa knew him
probably
a while
back
there. My brother worked at that Krispy Kreme shop in Fargo. Crazy lines, crazy carbs, crazy goods. Tyler, thank you so
much for listening.
For the update.
What's the temperature in Fargo?
I haven't looked at the temperature today. It's got to be colder than.
Antarctica was 65 degrees, so I think
amazing.
Everything is upside down.
Say that for another conversation right now. With the news in New York City, here's John Tucker.
And Tom, New Hampshire's first in the nation presidential primary underway, and Bloomberg's Bob Moon has an update on where the top candidates stand nationally among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independent voters.
The Democrats vying for the chance to recapture the White House know well what's riding on this day.
It could begin the end of Donald Trump.
Fresh polling suggests he's the man of the moment. The latest Quinnipiac University national poll puts Bernie Sanders in the lead with 25% of support. Joe Biden has climbed back up to second with 17%, while Michael Bloomberg, founder and majority shareholder of Bloomberg LP, parent company of Bloomberg News, has 15%, though he's not competing in New Hampshire. Elizabeth Warren's fourth-place position may explain this primary eval that foremost is beating Donald Trump.
Whoever our Democratic nominee is, I'm in 100%.
Bloomberg Radio's live primary coverage starts tonight at 7 New Hampshire time. Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Well, it's not just Democrats in the Granite State. President Trump grabbed the spotlight campaigning in Manchester Monday night.
Democrats are now the party of high taxes, high crime, open borders, late-term abortion, socialism, and blatant corruption. The Republican Party is the party of the American worker, the American family.
The Philippines has notified the United States of its intent to terminate a major security pact allowing American forces to train in that country. It's the most serious threat to the country's treaty alliance under President Rodrigo Duterte. Duterte has often criticized U.S. security policies despite the Philippine military's close historic ties with its American counterpart. And in a court filing, U.S. prosecutors told a judge that longtime Republican operative Roger Stone deserves to spend as long as 9 years in prison for lying to Congress to protect President Trump and other crimes. Stone is due to be sentenced in Washington February 20th. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg Tom.
John Tucker, thanks so much. Lift the market up 11, Dow futures up 117, the VIX 14.68. The euro, well, we had a 109 print, a little stronger here, 109.08. This is Bloomberg.
The ring of fire, the ring of fire.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
For centuries, Welsh farmers have been perfecting the balance between maintaining the spectacular landscapes of Wales while producing delicious lamb and beef. Lucky for us, we have everything we need from the elements: grass, rainwater, and a whole lot of pride. Sustainability is key as we continue to work in harmony with our surroundings to bring you a plate that's uniquely Welsh. It's in the taste. Learn more at eatwelshlamandwelshbeef.com.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Heroes. They're the ones we turn to in our darkest hour. Like when you blow a fuse and the lights go off. Whether it's electrics to heating, plumbing to plastering. At Local Heroes, every job completed by an expert tradesperson comes with a 12-month British Gas guarantee when you pay online. So, if it needs fixing, there's a local hero for that. To get a quote, search Local Heroes. Terms and conditions apply.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell saying the U.S. Central Bank is keeping a close eye on fallout from the deadly coronavirus outbreak in China, singling it out among risks threatening the U.S. and world economy. Powell making the comments in prepared remarks he is scheduled to deliver before U.S. lawmakers today. U.S. stock index futures rising ahead of those remarks. S&P futures up 13 points. Dow futures up 143 and NASDAQ futures up 52. The DAX in Germany's up 1%. 10-year Treasury down 3/30 seconds. Yield 1.57%. Yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil is up 2.1% or $1.04 to $50.61 a barrel. And COMEX gold down 0.3% or $4.50 at $15.75 an ounce. The euro 1.0912 against the dollar. British pound 1.2955 and the yen at 109.78. And T-Mobile winning court approval for its $26.5 billion takeover of Sprint. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. Following up on that Sprint T-Mobile deal, there were 4 wireless carriers. Now there's going to be 3. We finally get this T-Mobile Sprint deal done. Almost 2 years in the making. Regulatory hurdles, both at the federal and state level, all have been cleared. This deal is going to go through. Giving us what's the bottom line here, we talked to our good friend John Butler. He covers all things telecom for Bloomberg Intelligence. John joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. So, John, what's the practical implications of T-Mobile and Sprint getting together finally?
So finally, the deal is done. It's great news for both T-Mobile and Sprint. For T-Mobile in particular, it gives them access to Sprint's 2.5 gigahertz spectrum, which is a big fat block of nationwide spectrum that is ideally suited for 5G. And so this whole deal here, the approval of the deal is going to allow T-Mobile to really move forward, I think, quite aggressively on 5G.
So do consumers, I mean, what's it going to mean for consumers? Is there going to be any real difference in the marketplace?
I don't think so. You know, I mean, that was the concern coming in. The states really thought, God, you know, if we allow these companies to merge, prices are going to go up across the board. The reality is the wireless business is a commodity business, and I think there's sort of a cap on pricing in general that's out there. Yeah. You know, you can see it particularly at Christmas time. You know, the wireless carriers really get into it. And so prices tend to fluctuate over the course of the year, but on balance, they tend to move down over time.
On a game theory basis, what do Verizon and AT&T do? If it's a triopoly now and they have to merge and go against the pink T-shirt and all the market share the pink T-shirt's taking, is there an active, visible response from Verizon or AT&T?
I think Verizon pushes really hard on the C-band spectrums coming at year end. Again, T-Mobile now has access to a big fat chunk of mid-band spectrum, which is ideal for 5G. The C-band spectrum is very similar to that spectrum block. And I think for Verizon to compete on a level playing field now with T-Mobile, they need that spectrum. So they're actually going to, I think, really step up and be aggressive in most major markets.
John, I still haven't downloaded Catalina on the Apple, the major software upgrade of Apple, because there's so many glitches within it. Why do I need 5G? Am I going to download, is a phrase download to get 5G? Do I want it?
I think 5G, it's a great question, Tom. I actually think 5G is more well suited to enterprise applications, and that's where the carriers see a lot of money and margin. For you and me, in the short run, I think it represents a step up in capacity, but not much more.
This is the time I got to go to Apple, and you're just omnibus coverage on it. You've been brilliant about staying in it. And the product Apple's going to go out of business. They're terrible. And Butler said, wait a minute. What's your next essay you're going to write for Bloomberg Intelligence on Apple? Is it on services? Is it on unit dynamics? I mean, what's the thing you're thinking about of Apple into 2020?
So in 2020, what I'm watching for Apple is, number one, the diversification of the iPhone product line. We have a low-cost iPhone coming out. Initially, they said in March, according to Bloomberg. I think that gets pushed out by coronavirus, but not much, probably a couple of months. That gives them play at the low end of the portfolio, and then we have a 5G phone coming in September. As you mentioned, longer term, I think Apple's trying to make that pivot from hardware to software and services. So I'm keeping a close eye on the content business and also the fintech business and health apps to see what they do there. It's early days, but I think that's an important new vertical for them.
So, John, you mentioned kind of the
vertical. That's Bloomberg Intelligence talk.
Yeah, exactly.
So, kind of this as a vertical.
Exactly. So, the kind of the mid-range phone in terms of price, is that because we've talked about in the past markets like China, like India, mass markets, but not necessarily markets where the high-end phone is that competitive from a consumer perspective. Is this new mid-range phone kind of targeting some of those international markets?
Yes, it is. So it's a sequel to the iPhone SE, if you remember that. That was a $399 phone. This will be priced much the same way. And in terms of look and feel, I think it's going to be fashioned after the iPhone 8 in terms of what the body of the phone's going to look like. And like the SE, the guts are going to be all updated. The updated processor, operating system, apps, and so forth. So, it taps the high end of that mid-range market, and it expands Apple's addressable market opportunity and gives them a play in those markets like India and China, where the sort of iPhone 11 is out of reach, I think, for the average consumer.
I don't agree with that, because you can do the financing, and it's like $50-$60 a month, right?
It is, but if you're making a fraction of the average income here in the U.S., it's still a pricey proposition, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When do we have to stop buying Apple stuff for our children?
There's got to be.
Did you see a memo on that from John Butler?
No, and I got my twins are approaching their 24th birthday, and that feels like the time I need to just cut them off, right?
You think so?
Okay, that's
good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck indeed.
John Butler, brilliant on Apple, and of course, I mean, what do you buy, hold, sell, and busted his chops, folks? $323 a share. What was it, 200 something, and they're going out of business.
Yep. So I think the secret is out on the 5G phone and the low-end phone. The key for Apple is they need to keep the momentum going in the iPhone product line as we get into 21, because they're going to lap tougher comps.
John Butler, thanks so much for joining us. John Butler covers all things telecom, phones, all that kind of fun stuff, Apple for Bloomberg Intelligence, and we appreciate him joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. When I look at Apple, Tom, I see $200 billion in cash on the balance sheet. I see $60 billion a year in free cash flow, and I just don't know what they do. I see a dividend yield. It's 1 and change. I mean, it seems like the dividend has to get some play there.
Morning. Next quarter, dividend or share
why isn't this thing a 2.5-3% dividend yield? I don't get it. I know it's a tech company. and they don't like to support those kinds of dividends, but there's only so much stock you can buy back. So we'll have to see. But Apple, ready for a 5G upgrade. S&P up 12, Dow up 138, NASDAQ up 49. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL. Every journey matters.
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out,
it's time to search at On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
Vodafone 5G will have the power to change your world. From driverless cars to virtual reality and real-time gaming. That's why we're rolling out 5G across the UK. Discover Vodafone 5G on the UK's best mobile data network. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
NPerf testing awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance based on 35,664 tests on the NPerf app in the UK. Coverage may vary. Visit vodafone.co.uk.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning, I'm Karen Moscow along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the opening bell is brought to you by SEI. Today's competitive marketplace requires asset managers to become more operationally adept. See how you can transform your business with SEI's global platform at SEIC.com/IMS. The S&P 500 up 0.5%, or about 15 points to 3366. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.4%, or 121 points at 29,397. And the Nasdaq's up 0.6% at the open, up 56 points at 96.84. 10-year Treasury down 1/32, yield 1.57%. Yield on the 2-year 1.40%. NYMEX crude oil jumping up 2.1%, up $1.07 at $50.64 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.25%, or $3.70 at $15.75.80 an ounce. The euro 1.0913 against the dollar. The yen 109.81. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Nice lift to the market, 29,400 on trading on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk to B. Ritholtz of Bloomberg Opinion, also with a small podcast as well. Barry Ritholtz here. We'll do the markets and all that in a bit. But Barry, you got a trenchant article, and this works out perfectly, Paul, because Ritholtz is Senior Vice President Arrogance Analysis here at Bloomberg LP.
That's perfect. Arrogance Capital.
What reads through your research note on young tech upstarts is none of this would have happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I just want to go to one idea of the absolute belief you could get away with bundling and collecting food people's tips and redeploying them across an accounting statement. Just that you'd have the audacity to think you could get away with that until the New York Times publishes it. It's like, OMG, we didn't mean to do that. I mean, give us some flesh on that.
To be fair, we've seen plenty of bad behavior from corporate entities, WorldCom, Enron. Go back to the bad old days of the late 90s, early 2000s.
What's different now?
So what's different now is that a number of business models that you would think we learned the lesson from the late 90s as being terrible, terrible business models are not only getting venture funded, they're getting venture funded round 2, round 3, IPO. Some of them have become publicly traded companies, and their business models are so terrible that they are forced to engage in such behavior that it's pretty reprehensible.
Economics, Meghnad Desai, London School of Economics, his entire regime as the great Marxist or turned capitalist is profitability. In your study of these different little itty-bitty companies that are all sexy and all that.
$5 billion market cap.
Okay, that's a market cap. That's a hype. Do any of them have a profit visibility out the x-axis?
Not really. I mean, some of them have these delightful, slide decks. And always in the out years, in year 7 and year 10, they're super profitable. Sometimes on paper today, they have a penny a share or a handful of cents. They're not crazy profitable. A lot of them, their stock prices have fallen because the promise of profitability that was supposed to take place, if only we get a big pool of capital, we can become profitable in year 3. Doesn't happen, and the shareholders vote with their dollars and their feet.
So, Barry, the headline of your essay, Startups Behaving Badly, how much of that, to the extent that there's some trend here of poor corporate behavior, how much of it is tied to the fact that we're seeing more and more companies come out with the founders having super voting stock and having that perpetual control and maybe the checks and balances from the board, from some of the original investors, venture capital investors, just really isn't there.
So it's funny you brought that up because I did not explore that. And the main reason was when I look at companies like Uber, where the founder was essentially created this whole frat bro culture, I didn't want to look at that. I mean, Uber has a path to profitability, and they are a disintermediator. They are getting in between what exists now, which is the unholy alliance between taxi fleets and local regulatory regimes and cab riders. What's going on these days is sort of a middlemen inserting themselves in between the normal user and the buyer and the seller. And that's very different than the traditional disruptive technology. So I never even got to the question of, hey, what is the super voting shares at Facebook, arguably?